Call the Board of Directors business meeting to order. And
Parker,
here,
Kurt Offenbacher,
here,
Patty Schaffel,
Here.
Dale Wilson,
here,
Charles Kimball,
here. Staff, Kyle Rodman,
Wendy McCain,
Mark Memmer,
Sarah Klein,
Rob Courier, Doug Barrowman.
New guests online. We've got Scott Bauer from Northwest Mutual Advisors, Stacy Amaski from Foster Garvey, and Sean Keats is from Barclays. He's our new underwriter, so we'll get to meet him momentarily. We got a couple staff that are in interviews today, probably be joining us later on.
There's any changes to the agenda timeline?
Only that our scholarship presentation now is at 5:30.
Oh.
Instead of 5 o'clock. Have to stretch a little bit
Wow.
on subject matter.
Take a long break in the middle.
Okay.
Well, just.
I can flex my GM report as long as you can read.
Any
Sorry.
deferred items? Public comment.
Should I read the, other than our guests? Isn't there? Nobody else.
No one there. Okay, treasurer's report, Sarah.
Hello.
All right, so we're gonna start off with a big one, our annual special districts insurance payment, which covers our general liability, auto, and property. And you can see that there's been a trend over the, recent, well, it looks like the last time it went down or remained stable was in 2019. So
Well, how big is it?
everything else, costs have been increasing. Let's see, item number 9 was Northwest River Partners. Part of this is our annual dues, and then the second part of it is for the voluntary contribution to the Our Power is Water public relations campaign that the board approved supporting.
Yep. That's running in media markets all over the Northwest to kind of promote the benefits of the hydro system. Been very effective and
It's been running now, right?
it still is, yeah, they keep it going. It's TV, but it's also online. There's a lot of promotions that go on in social media and other things too, so. One more plug, Clark from River Partners will be here tomorrow. If anybody wants to stop by at 2 o'clock to learn more about that and everything else that they're doing.
Send myself a note.
Yeah.
It'll be in the.
Sure, yeah, just let me know.
Item number 15 is another insurance item. I just like to point out our our supplemental cyber coverage. About $19,000 seems like pretty inexpensive peace of mind on that complicated front.
So I have a question, just because I'm currently learning to speak insurance. Do we have every page of what our policy is?
Yes.
Good.
They
Good,
give us
because
that- every year
it's
they give us a big thick.
Yeah, I bet, because I just got mine and
Yeah,
I've
it's
never
huge.
read every page of it before.
Yeah,
Okay, good. I mean, I'm just
Yeah,
learning
I
to speak
know.
insurance.
You're probably gonna be teaching me a few things, so.
Let's
can't
see,
wait.
let's hope not.
Yeah.
We got some of those coverages through WHA.
yeah, so they
Yeah.
provide us the packet every year. Well, we get the actual coverage through special districts
Mhm.
insurance. but
And
WHA
others.
Yeah,
Um,
WHA is the broker.
They're the broker.
They are the broker. So this one, item number 15 in particular, the payment goes to WHA and then they pay the actual carrier for it.
It's required by ordinance statute that we have a broker to do this for us. We can't do it ourselves.
Oh, so they still brokered even when SDAO was in and Buda.
Yeah, this is a direct relationship with EPUD, so this is just specific to us. And some OPUDA organizations use a different broker, not all of them use WHA, but
And we previously used a different broker as well. I was here when we made that change.
probably been 10 years or so since we did that.
What's a decade or two?
I'm a friend. All right, item number 19, this is a new one, public generating pool for $15,000. This was a contribution to participate in a resource adequacy study. So I think the plan is for that to be a final product that can be released to the public and that will help with policy decisions and discussions. I'm sure there was
Yeah,
anything you
no,
wanted
it's
to
an
add to that.
independent study of our regional power supply system. The point here is to kind of have something independent of what's going on with the federal government. They're looking to study this from their own perspective. And we wanted to have something as utilities to say, here is the adequacy situation that's going on. They've hired E3, which is a very well-known and reputable contractor to do this for them. So I think the results are pretty enlightening and tell a story about challenges that we're facing.
So what relationship does this have to the resource adequacy program?
Completely independent. It's really, I think the purpose of this study was to show how big a gap we have from actually getting to a resource adequacy standard. So the program is going to come into play, I think in 2028 is when it goes live. This study is going to show how hard it's going to be for us in the region to meet the goals that are in that program. It's going to be pointing out we need to change policies and or direction in terms of resource development. That'd be my suspicion.
When does that report?
When do we expect them to get back this fall?
Yeah, fall this year, and there's like a whole communications plan that goes with it, so for public outreach and policymaker outreach. And utilities, so we'll see drafts of it along the way.
Who started?
Or Public Generating Pool, PGP. It's a group of mostly Washington utilities
Okay.
that have their own generation.
Okay, oh, all right, so like,
Yeah, EWEB kind of pulled us into it. They said, hey, we're gonna do this. If you wanted to put your name on it and have access to all the materials, it's a
Yeah.
pretty cheap rate to be able to do it with.
yeah, it sounds like a good,
I think it'll help us.
excellent,
So
yeah.
people that didn't take part in it.
They can, you can still cite it, but we'll have our name, our logo will be attached to it and it'll add a little umph if we're talking to legislators or other folks.
Gotta go sit in the corner.
All right, I have a picture of the next one for you. This is our Reel-O-Matic. It's a piece of equipment that basically takes wire off of a larger reel and puts it into a smaller, we call it reels, for the line crews to use. What do you think, Dale?
I think that's a blow. I asked for that for a long time.
Not about the.
That's the most used piece of equipment in the warehouse.
You used to do
Yeah.
this manually, huh?
I was just gonna ask.
On a bicycle.
We actually, so we just bought this because the other one started arcing and sparking, we had to
Yeah.
rewire it.
Yeah.
And I had to wait till Dell left the company before I got it.
Yeah.
So. That's very.
I figured that's what went on here.
Yeah, I like to watch them struggle.
On purpose.
Guess what? I'm back.
Yeah.
You're welcome to go out and use it.
Yeah, you can use it anytime you want to now.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I have a picture of this one too. We purchased a new mail opener to replace our aging one. So you might not think of opening mail as such a big deal, but when you get hundreds of payments every day that have to be separated between the.
I was wondering how many we
checks,
still got hard copies of.
Kelly could tell us.
I don't know,
I don't know, but
Thousands, yeah.
here's the new machine.
Yeah.
And then item number 40, just wanted to point out, we do pay election fees, when directors are up for election to Lane County.
We owe you back. I'm gonna pay you back.
2,000 per director,
Sure.
obviously.
Yeah.
You gotta cover the county's overhead. There's some.
Did they use, is that new?
No,
We've always been,
We've always
I don't know if it's gone up or not.
I don't know either, actually. I could check.
They
it
sent
out.
me a certificate of election.
Yeah.
First time I've ever seen it.
Oh, I got one
Well,
the very first time
That
out.
was part of.
Of course, I had a real judge come in and sort of-
$6,158.
Actually, they were very helpful for me, the elections office.
Yeah.
They give you a lot of information.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
They seem well
That's great
regarded.
feedback.
They can pin right to what you're looking
Their elections administrator just got the big job with the state. I don't know if you heard that. She's
Yeah.
that new Oregon State elections
Uh-huh.
person.
for. One of them, the guy that runs it down there, he got an award Friday night.
Yeah, they recommend something.
You can only imagine what they have to deal with sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Not fun right now.
Yeah, I got a lot of information to at one point.
Yeah, you can You could tell, you had to get that gal out of the back and say, this is what I'm looking for. He goes, okay. $2.73.
Don't do it on the phone.
Yeah, it was pennies.
Okay, all right, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Everything to talk about?
Item number 25, Echo Engineers for the consulting on the RFP, and where are we at in that
I
process?
think that's the last payment, isn't
That was it, yeah.
Yeah, so they've
Yeah, we
completed
got
their
the final.
work and
Would February have been, I don't know. Could be-
I thought this was it,
Okay.
we paid the original 11 back in the fall.
Okay.
So when we first engaged them, so.
they've offered to make themselves available if we needed it.
Sure.
Yes.
Their scope of work has come to an end.
I have a question, item 64, simplify LC easement recording fees. Do we have so many easements for it? I don't remember seeing that before.
You know, we go through a lot of property. I don't know if this is a.
There's some,
Why is it-
this is some catch up.
Okay.
There were some that, from 2024, they must have been doing some year-end cleanup or
So
something.
these
We
are
got a
items
bunch.
that are where we run a line across property or something?
Yeah, rented property, new anchors, things like that.
Things that weren't there before that are now being,
Yeah.
is that because we're moving lines around a little bit when we're rebuilding?
Some, and then, yeah, cause then AASHTO has something to say about it too. You start moving from where you were 10 feet over and things like that, and you gotta get a anchor or something like that in place, so. Just digging the hole anymore, Ryan, is becoming quite an ordeal.
Well, it's not major money, I never remember seeing it before, is a
Yeah.
good question.
It seems like somebody found a stack on their desk or something.
Got it.
You're gonna see two, Brian's, more, I think, even fees for that, for the permits, because Lane County got it through the legislature to, they're going away from more of the blanket permits, and it's $500 and.
Yeah, Lake County's also raising all their permit.
That's it.
They're raising them 22%, 4%.
Well,
I got another item, 219 through two, I'm sorry, Kurt, are you done? For now, yeah. I have another items, 219 to 239 was all transfer switches.
Oh.
That's $10,500 on top of about that much money last month. Are we gonna need to consider putting a cap on this on an annual basis? It's starting to be real money.
It's a good question.
$20,000 out the window since the first of the year for this. I mean, it's fine to help people, but that's quite something we need to think
Yeah, I didn't
about.
see that, yeah.
We could do a last call, or we could, make it a certain budget amount every year so that it is not going too
Seems
far.
like we gotta consider a budget amount we agree on, that's it, once it's done, it's done.
Is it just unlimited now?
Right now, it's open. So, and
21 this month, there was about that many last month.
Yeah, well, I think that's a positive sign. I mean,
Yeah.
those people obviously are very happy that we've offered it.
we get great feedback about it.
that's a good idea. We're people's power. Let's do help our group.
That's all fine, but other repairs have to pay for this, so.
Yeah, well, let's support our
Did
people
we
though.
put any assumption in the budget, for this?
I'm asking whether the board thinks we should spend $10,000 a month. $120,000 a year, money we wanna spend.
I think that will lighten up as we get out of outage season, but
Fair enough.
Rob's saying he thinks maybe 50,000 was our
I think we
budget.
planned on 50 for the year, but I don't think we've been tracking it super close.
Well,
Also
by the way,
because of the
about
response
that.
that we've gotten has been so good, but.
We can bring
I'm not
back a
saying we shouldn't do it,
proposal,
I'm questioning whether we need to think about how far we wanna.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think there was a lot of pent up demand, so we were
Yeah.
seeing that
Uh-huh.
after years of not allowing these general leaks on our system. Now that we've probably got the big wave, but you'll see this a certain amount every.
How hard would it be to see what went out in 2024?
Easy, yeah, really easy.
We can
Yeah, why don't you let us know about
Sure.
that?
Look at how many-
And
$500 a pop,
we'll
so
have further
it's pretty
discussion on it.
Yeah,
We could always put a cap on it each year. or
Yeah.
Reduce it to 250 or.
that's easily manageable. We can do that. Why don't we'll bring you the numbers and then a proposal maybe for a budget amount.
This, and I don't know if this is the place, but I talked to an electrical contractor and he was just saying all the different utilities have different
Yeah.
requirements. And I asked about, so I said, how's he put? He said, oh, they're not bad, but he said it might be a good idea to get maybe we have a half a dozen, or most people that do our
Mhm.
hookups to get, just have them meet with someone that, maybe they have ideas
Oh, yeah.
that would make their work,
Yeah.
make their process easier. It's not the work, it's the process of getting something
Going
done.
through the
To
paperwork.
get a new
Okay.
service or change of service.
Yeah.
SUV's latest, they won't let them put a new service on the back of a house where they can't. They have to access a backyard to get to it. So if a remodel, they make the
Yeah.
people move a service to the front, which he said is like over $5,000. Well, they still have meter readers. They
Yeah.
do. So anyway, he just saw
That's
it,
good
like-
feedback.
it sounded like,
You're talking about like electricians that do
electric,
that work?
yeah,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like rent.
Their mascot is a pterodactyl.
Yeah, we can talk to our program managers and.
it's just,
That's a good idea, yeah.
I have one question about 46. I've never seen spark plugs that cost $4,500.
They're probably for Short Mountain, but
I
it was
figured
number
it was.
46.
Yeah.
oh, diesels.
You'll find there's a lot of expensive parts that go into it.
How long do those last?
Great question.
2 weeks, we replaced them a lot.
I've seen it on the budget a lot.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
well, they foul a lot, so
Yeah,
it's better.
yeah,
But
dirty
yeah,
fuels.
those things run all the time.
But they're that big, huh?
Not natural gas engines.
But they're that big.
Hey, can we
Mark.
talk about two
How big are
sixty-five
they?
for just a second, White Creek?
Sure about that.
Remind me again when that contract expires.
End of 27? Yeah,
So pretty much in sync with our product change.
yeah.
So the second question that flows out of that is, and I may have asked this before, but I don't recall. Does that contract incorporate it into our headroom with BPA? So that doesn't change anything.
It's a big difference between Short Mountain and White Creek. Short Mountain's a legacy resource, so it was part of our dedicated resources. White Creek was not. It was brought in after Lewis, so it's just, it's undefined in our.
Right, and then because of the slice.
It'll be a tier 2 cost then.
Yeah, well, if we had to replace it, it would be. So right now, again, we're not taking it to load, so we've been reselling it. I think it's probably a net positive in the next couple of years. Very close.
Yeah.
But it's a financial transaction. It's not a,
We don't use the power, I forgot.
yeah. So we will have a decision maybe on whether we want to extend the current offtake agreement with White Creek. I don't know if you've seen any outreach on that.
There's been a little bit of chatter about it. Some of the project owners are talking about it, but we're not a project owner, we're just an off taker, right? And so we're just, so I think it will just.
It's been a spectacular deal for them, hasn't it?
Let's see. I think they've probably got the better end of the deal over time, as markets cratered and, White Creek stayed at a relatively higher cost. That's changed in the last few years here, but, I think they've done okay with it. We probably, if you look back over the 20 years, it's gonna be interesting to see, did we net gain or lose from the whole thing?
I'm looking forward to doing that analysis.
We did,
So that should be fairly easy to do.
I think
I
so.
think so, yeah.
We did really well early on.
If we wanted to go to load with that, we'd still have to pay transmission costs to get it here.
A number of different costs, so each Bonneville would charge us something called a resource shaping fee, basically, so that because of the variability of the output. They have to kind of firm it up, and it's almost like a $20 per megawatt hour adder just for that service. And so that coupled with the cost of the project, coupled with transmission, coupled with the scheduling costs of where, like, it's just, it all layers into the fact, when you compare it just to tier 2. Right, it just, it makes much more sense, I think, right now, just to put all of that onto tier 2.
Okay. We'll bring that back here at some point as that gets closer though to
Yeah.
ending.
I had a utility just ask me today what we were gonna do about that project. And kind of gave them my thinking. I think there are some utilities that are going to be looking to take that output, and as I think will get divvied up to other utilities that are in different contract situations with Bonneville.
Yeah, it still boggles my mind that we got there, it's almost 20 years old, and it's really, never really worked for anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was just.
It worked for Rick Castelli, actually.
well, that was a good idea at the time, and it felt like this was back in 2000 2006, 7.
It was a really good.
Commodity costs were going up, nobody had any power, wind was coming, we knew there was, mandates happening. But as it played out, yeah, it was more complicated and.
Well, I mean, all I would say about that, and I'm not gonna judge that board by any means, I wasn't there. But I think it's a message to all of us to consider careful.
Be cautious.
It's easy to make a decision. It's gonna- At this, in
Yeah.
20 years, we make a lot of.
There's always consequences.
It's also,
The thing.
our sense of where the board's at is trying to simplify and trying to get back to our core business, and that's a contract that came from a different time, when we were trying to expand and get away from Bonneville, and so, the situation today, we very much support letting it go, I would say.
I have a joke, we're a fence building company, we sell electricity for cash flow.
There's that view, yeah. In that sense, a wind contract doesn't necessarily seem to fit very well.
Oh, I'm sorry, does anybody have anything else? I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks, Sarah.
thank you guys.
I forgot.
Good questions today.
Never mind on the next item.
President's report is gonna be short, so the external organization's moving down to item 7. That's where it should be. Board
Okay.
training and development. Wendy sent out list of options, and I'm sure you all studied it heavily.
I did.
But and I've looked at it, but maybe by next time we can take a look at the list. There's some stuff in there I think that would
Yeah,
be beneficial, some not, but
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Maybe we
Put it
can
on the
pick
next agenda.
a couple, 3 or
Mhm.
1 or something to.
yeah. Is that something you'd be willing to come in like an hour early for if we wanted to do some of those webinars?
I
Would
think
you like
that-
to?
I would.
That would work as a separate, yeah.
Okay. That could be most efficient if we wanted to do that, something like that.
Take turns bringing popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. We could also set up a, special training too, just whatever makes the most sense.
Depends on, there's some pretty heavy ones and then some short.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at it.
Sound like some of the just basic, Robert's rules type things could be helpful.
That's the one that
Just a
caught
good-
my eye.
Yeah,
It's a
some
good
of
one.
these
Yeah.
for an hour.
It's not a waste of time.
Yeah, a good,
That's the one that caught my eye of all of them.
good reminder.
It's good to know. We tend to run pretty informal, which is great, but when you need those rules, they're helpful too, so.
No, and I think it always helps to bring us back to remind us that when we're in a public meeting. We're in a public meeting.
Well, it helps to understand the order too, if you amend things and stuff, you have to vote on the amendment before you vote on the main one.
Yeah.
Where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Table something.
Nobody's supposed to speak twice till everybody's spoken once. Things
Is that
like
right?
Yeah, that's one of the rules.
Yeah, there was 2 of them, and it was weird, because the first one said how to implement Robert's rules, and the other one was what Robert's rules was, so you gotta do the first one before you do the
Okay.
second. That's what I
We can
believe.
try to sequence those. Were those just like webinars?
I just know it's on that sheet.
I was looking at the same ones. yeah.
Okay.
And I think the ethics training too, that the state provides
It's
is
good.
something we ought to do periodically.
Yeah.
Just to remind ourselves how easy it is
Yeah.
to get in trouble.
I was gonna bring that up because we have a tendency to group before or after. And you have to be really aware of that, 3 of us together.
Yeah.
So,
You can't meet after, we can't sit around and talk.
well,
Not more than 2.
no, you can't discuss any business at all. And so, I mean,
Yes.
if anybody was
I didn't
coming
know
out on the yeah, exactly. If somebody was coming for whatever reason, you could throw
Yeah, the county got themselves into some real trouble like 15 years ago when they
Mhm.
were doing some of that, but it was almost serialized meetings, so even if it was just 2 of them, if the one person told somebody else, it could be
Right.
inferred as having
Right.
a meeting,
Yeah.
so. There's some stuff you gotta be careful
So
about.
like, let's say we had the chambers or the benefit, only 2 could go.
Or there, you can have more, but you can't sit together and talk business.
There's provisions like to travel together to meetings and things like that, but you just have to be careful to discuss any pertinent.
I didn't know.
We all talk
Just have to
about
be
the
conscious
industry, but not to discuss
etiquette.
specifics.
The goal is to have all that in public
We've always been
session.
pretty careful when I've
Yeah.
been involved,
Yeah, I don't think
kind of
we're in trouble.
laying it
with
out
that.
to me in the beginning, and we've always kind of been careful. I don't think we've really.
It's good to know, I mean, you don't want to end up with the, black mark, but the county had not long ago the government ethics.
Right, yeah. And
I
that's
can
very
tell stories.
prevalent in some of their minds.
Yeah,
We don't want that.
That's one of the, one of the problems, some of the boards are 3-member boards. That
We can't
means,
even have coffee in the lobby.
you can't,
I had a friend who
Yeah,
used
it's
to
a
be a
lot
commissioner
tougher.
for Polk County and they couldn't even talk to another board member alone.
Yeah,
Because it's a 3-person board, really tough.
Yeah.
that's a bad number.
It really
Most of the
is.
counties in Oregon are 3 members.
Yeah,
Are they? I didn't know that.
Tillamook is.
yeah, almost all the
You
Washington.
know, regarding
DCs.
Robert's rules, you know, basically it's designed so that nobody can filibuster the meeting or run it for themselves. And we don't really have a lot of discourse in this board that's, you know, we're not really at each other's odds with one another.
Yeah,
So it's not really, in my opinion, been all that necessary that we get more formal, but it's a process where it ever becomes necessary.
And it's just, it's good to know because
Yeah.
there have been times when that process has been necessary on this board, so.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen it.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
so the other part is legislative updates, which,
Well,
How many
here's what I
hours
would
we
say about that. We get a lot of our information from Danelle.
right,
She updates us certainly monthly, but often in between the Oputa meetings. But there is a lot in the media, also that, you know, if you just
Yeah.
even have a casual relationship with the media, you're gonna pick up some of it. And this is a really important time in the
Yeah.
Oregon legislature.
it's a moving target.
They're almost adopting Trump's technique, and that is that we'll put so much out there that nobody can pay attention to.
So 3,400 new bills
right. Yeah, I saw
in this.
They're all totally necessary, Kurt.
400 per legislator.
So, let me ask a question that has to do with legislation, maybe someone can answer this.
For legislator.
What does Pam Marsh care about what PGE does in Portland?
It's a good question. I'll mention she took $5,000 to $10,000 of donations from them. So that's part of it.
And she's at 300 miles from their service.
Where does she represent?
She's in
Ashland.
Ashland.
Ashland,
She's writing a lot of wildfire legislation that's being put out.
I see.
There was a media report that she had taken contributions from the investor-owned utilities and that didn't look good, so.
Well, I've liked a lot of what she's done in past years, but it seems like she's really out of her lane on a lot of this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's talking about legislative. I keep coming back to a lot of the media attention that surrounds both wildfires and resource adequacy. The media absolutely still does not distinguish between IOUs and COUs.
Not at all.
And when they say, they call the IOUs public power,
Yeah.
which is true, I guess,
Public
because they provide
utilities.
power to the public. But and we're kind of just letting that happen that way. We're not saying, hey, wait a second. But time may come soon where we need to say, you need to distinguish between IOUs and COUs,
Yeah.
particularly when you talk about rate pressure. Because
agree.
the pressure that our ratepayers are getting is nothing like what they're getting with the IOUs.
Yeah.
I just had a thread of that in the Benita area, you know, and I explained, well, and look at this, you know. So, and again, educating our public is the difference. And IOU, they get paid investors. We're public power for the people.
Yeah, I agree that some of the media reports that have come out recently, just the information and knowledge they have about our industry is at such a rudimentary level. They don't draw distinctions between IOUs and COUs, but more so they just don't understand like markets. Watching them try to explain a spawnable decision is torture. They're making claims like we're selling our cheap power to Louisiana and, you know, it'd be much better if we just sold it to California instead. Just simplifying it in terms that don't do anybody any good.
No, well, and the other problem is that the vast majority of media in Oregon is in the northern Willamette Valley, where it's all IOUs.
Yeah, we get forgotten about often. We should,
Sometimes that's useful.
it can be, we should try to change it. I've got a few legislative things in my GM report just to talk about. There's a lobby day coming up we can discuss. We had a meeting with
Yeah.
the speaker this month, yeah. I'll cover some of that.
Next item too, so.
So, okay. Let's just go to outside media reports, kind of overlap, so. I know, I think for all of us either virtual or their PPC.
I wouldn't have missed that.
Did you hear the standing ovation, hopefully?
Yeah.
It was good.
Their mic cut out on the
Okay.
standing ovations.
No, I didn't.
At the end of it, it did.
Yeah,
It cut out.
Or who?
Well, when Bonneville announced their decision.
Oh, yeah.
The group got up and gave them a standing ovation.
Yeah.
Except for two.
Except for two utilities that were named. You could tell it was torture.
So,
You think they'll fall in line, or do they can go
I
with,
think Seattle's announced they're going.
they can
with-
go with KISO regardless?
Yeah, if they're not a full requirement, especially.
So what happens to Wheeling in that scenario?
so
It's a
would
great
they,
question.
so Bonneville, they would get any advantage or disadvantage that Bonneville is getting?
For a
Because
portion of
they're-
their supply, so the block portion they would, but their own supply that they have, they're gonna integrate with California instead, so.
So can Bonneville charge them transmission between?
Crazy.
Probably.
The transmission topic is really big right now in terms of how this is all gonna play out. There was also news last week that Pacificor's new tariff that is what they're filing to join the California day-ahead market is going to unfairly charge a lot of Northwest users of that transmission. Because of the way that they do congestion pricing, it's a little technical, but this was all like nobody was aware of it until they filed this thing, and then PowerX has like the best, analysts and attorneys, and they're like, wait a second, this is gonna cost, billions of dollars or some big number to anybody that needs to use Pacific transmission going forward, so.
But then they went farther and they said there's gonna be incentives that cost. And
Yeah.
they're gonna turn around and give incentives for people that are for
To
individual.
build out
to
transmission.
rebuild transmission.
Yeah.
Pacific doesn't have a choice, so they want that.
Yeah,
It comes back to them.
I think it comes down to like, these things are gonna happen and the benefits are not gonna flow to Northwest ratepayers, they're gonna flow south, like they always have. And that's the fundamental issue with moving into a market we don't have control over, so.
I think it's the right thing.
Bonneville's decision was hard, I mean, they already got flack from Senator White and he came out hard against that, he's like, this is a short-sighted, stupid decision, Bonneville shouldn't be doing this.
What's he know about it?
Yeah, what does he know about it?
Also, one of his staffers gave him a piece of paper that said that that's what he should say. But the point is, like, they faced a lot of political pressure here, and for them to show the backbone that they did was huge.
Yeah, they bowed up. I'm not sure they would have if it worked for a new administration.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what discussions were had with DOE about this whole thing, but they never wavered. All the way through, they said, we're gonna make sure that we're evaluating this on the merits and that it has governance at the forefront. And the other side never wanted to hear that. They said, well, forget about that. It's gonna be a lot better and cheaper to go with California, let alone,
I mean, it'll be nice, California will be nice.
everything's good now. So,
We'll look at that issue again.
yeah,
It surprised me at KISO, the influence that IBEW has.
uh-huh,
The unions, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, I know unions have influence more on the East Coast, but to have them just kind of turn the whole,
that's why they
That's
haven't
the way I got it.
previously given up control, because they felt like there'd be, well, a market in itself, moves some of those jobs out of state, because you're gonna build resources elsewhere that are more conducive to wind or whatever it might be, and so the unions have had that kind of veto power over the marketplace down there, and they've had to, I don't know what they've promised them to get them to move a little bit even, but that's been a huge problem. Their whole renewable build out and the solar push has been a huge win for labor down there. They've started that back in the mid-2000s, and a lot of it was job creation. We're gonna put all these solar panels in place everywhere, and that's gonna create jobs for people. So they're worried about losing that in a market environment.
Thanks, Kyle.
I don't even understand about a quarter.
so more
Helps.
PPC,
Are you done?
with PPC. Yeah,
Yeah, I just throw in, Okuda in our last meeting. I think almost everybody was there. Was there in person or virtually?
It was virtual.
Yeah, so, then you already know, you heard my report on NWPPA. I try to be as comprehensive with that as I can because, it's an investment for this utility
Yeah.
and the board deserves to know what that's worth, and you'll have to decide on your own whether that's the case, but, and then you also know that we formed a committee within Okuda that I'm gonna chair. And we're gonna take another run, at reorganizing Okuda, and try to make some changes that move us into the 21st century, because I don't really think we're there. I'm disappointed that a lot of the inertia is on Okuda's board of directors, like, everything's fine, I don't care. I have to spend any more time doing this, good. just leave it the way it is. So, and the GMs are the opposite.
Yeah.
So I will say that at North Wasco, the board doesn't agree with their GM, at least what I've heard so far. And I may reach out and talk to him about it, because we both serve on NWPPA. And I'm gonna get back to you and have some more discussion about strategies
Okay.
to maybe relaunch this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to talk with you offline. There's been some chatter amongst the GM group about options.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I need to get a meeting set up
Okay.
before our next OPUDA meeting, at least have to get one meeting in and see if we can generate motion here. What do we wanna do? How do we wanna look at this? And
Okay.
what steps do we need?
Clask and I has an idea that I think has some merit if you want to reach out to them. about it.
Yeah, we'll call Merle up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charles, for taking that on. Or follow, let me put it this
Well-
way, following through on it, because it sort of stuttered there.
Well, when we started this, cause it's been over a year now.
Yeah.
That we started looking at the strategic plan, and I'm like, well, I don't care, I'll go along with what everybody else wants to do, but the longer this drags out. The more intransigent I'm getting, I'm getting stubborn about it, let's either do this.
Charles, I can't imagine. I had
No. I don't think that the status quo, you have to change.
Yeah.
I don't think that OPUDA is invested in change. I think that they're just happy where everything is. And I think we need to shake it up a little bit. What, an executive director? The more I think about it, I was ambivalent about it at one point, but the more I think about it, the more I think we'd really benefit from it. But we're gonna have to come up with what that's gonna cost us and whether people are willing to pay it. And we have one utility that's just rabid in opposition. You can't even get the conversation started before they get out in front of it, trying to stop it like a wildfire.
A lot of bad mojo from the past.
Reading Robert's rules.
One thing I would say, and I've noted this a few times, is that when you're talking to legislatures, what I notice is it's gotta be confusing for them to hear from so many different COU groups. That you get co-ops, you get PUDs, you get munis, we all come in with kind of the same message, but they're always like, so who are you talking for, and what do you represent? If we could have more of a unified consumer and utility voice, I think it would really help our cause.
And we went backwards on
Yeah.
that for a while, so we need to fix that as well.
I think it should be part of this.
I'll bring that up in this first
Okay.
committee. So.
That's also not in my mind, some option of a.
Yeah.
The other, Kyle and I met with Julie Fahey Sunday, the Speaker of the House, Danelle came from Portland.
Yeah,
That was nice of her.
Yeah, really.
yeah, I missed that. I meant to show up for that.
Oh, okay, yeah. It was,
He has a lot of influence and
She does.
we ought to hew close to her.
she doesn't let on a lot.
She's like this,
Yeah, no, she's good.
Yeah,
We're
she's-
like her.
huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You don't know if she's got deuces or aces, but she did listen, and I think kind of open her eyes to maybe what we're trying to do with, the city's input, what they're asking of us to help them out. And she seemed to me a little surprised with like Junction City, one side of the street's paying
Yeah,
35 or 40% more for electricity than the other side of the
Yeah.
street.
I don't think they know.
I think that's a winning message, and what we kind of went in with was, you say you want to do more about affordability and helping ratepayers. Well, here's a solution, we have it ready to go, we've done this consistently and effectively. So getting it on her radar more than anything was the goal, and I think we did that.
Even if you just start initially with just something that looks like a little more consolidation and let it get its own momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we told her that, it's, the communities have been coming to us, we've been hearing from them, so it's not something we're trying to push, but we wanna listen, see if we can be responsive. She did mention that it would be helpful to talk to some of the other legislators that actually represent these areas, so, Harvick was, mentioned multiple times as being someone to talk to. He's ideologically much different than his predecessor.
I don't care about that at
Yeah.
all. I think it's a good conversation to
Yeah.
have. And if you like, I'll reach out to her.
I think it'd be helpful to get together and just chat about this, and he represents all the way down to the city, I believe, he's got Cottage Grove.
Including Country Grove.
Yeah, yeah, so he'd be a good one to talk to.
His district almost exactly mirrors Heatherbuck's.
Okay,
Very few different precincts.
got it.
Yeah, I think her little part of West Eugene. I don't
Is
know.
not in the,
Yeah, she kind of relies on that.
Okay.
yeah.
We also talked on the Senate side, I think it's Hayden, Cedric Hayden down that way, so
Oh, it's tough.
it's a tougher one. Yeah,
It doesn't, you don't know if he's listening. We met with him.
that's the weirdest
When
conversation.
we went to Salem on the sub issue, we met with him, but it was the worst reception that we had of all the people. And how many, we saw 12
Yeah.
legislators that day. And what a fantastic job Danelle did, just getting that whole thing coordinated. And he just kind of sat there gruffly and gave us no feedback. And, you know, in fact, we sat in his office for 10-15 minutes before he bothered to walk in.
So give Danelle credit.
Yeah.
I think Julie was very surprised that she came down
Yeah,
to Portland.
yeah.
And just
Yeah.
okay,
Cup of coffee.
informal,
Yeah, right.
just a little.
Ketchup chat.
I think she felt like it went well too. I talked to her a little bit afterwards. She's not gonna let on. One thing I got out of that was, Speaker of the House is not gonna be a champion of any cause like this. She has to be pretty neutral. So getting some of these other legislators on our side would be helpful. Maybe some wind chime.
managed groups.
Yeah. But I thought it was good. Thank you for coming, Kurt.
The other outside, all I had. Okay, staff reports,
Okay.
report, which we've had a little bit of.
A little bit already. We'll see how much of this I wanna repeat. Real quick, since this is part of my duties as assigned on outside obligations, I had a NIA board meeting yesterday and then today I did it remotely, but I was in Seattle yesterday. A little bit of insight into the current situation at states, nonprofits in Bonneville right now. A lot of anxiety about funding and where things are headed. I heard that from multiple people. On this board, I should say, we've got a Bonneville vice president, the head, one of the higher ups at Oregon Department of Energy, Washington Department of Energy. So it's the 4 states, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, that participate in NEA. So you get a really cross section of folks, but a lot of nonprofits too, we were able to talk about. You all know this, but anyone right now relying on federal funding is just under incredible scrutiny, and you can feel it when you talk to them. This is just the facts. Bonneville right now is unable to fund anything that has any reference to DEI or even clean energy as a term. So NEA, because we rely on Bonneville funding, I think it's 35% of our funding. NEA has had to go through and remove any reference to all this stuff too. So interesting hearing the board discussion around that. Some, I'd say on the east siders, the Idahos and the Montaners, like, yeah, that was not something we were really into anyway, so not a big deal. Different conversation when you talk to the folks from Oregon, Washington. Good news for NEA. NEA is focused on energy efficiency. What this organization does is move the market for efficient appliances, codes and standards, all the stuff that helps us save energy. That seems very aligned with the administration's agenda. I think that's what they're hearing from folks at the Department of Energy. And this group never gets too ideological. It does represent all 4 states, so it hasn't been too big of a lift. The biggest, threat here is really to Bonneville, and everybody I talk to just says that is a tough place to work right now. And so it's amazing that they're doing anything. But we did have the document scrub discussion yesterday, so that was what I was doing yesterday, kind of having oversight. I'm the representative for the indirect funders, so all the Bonneville companies that fund NEA, I'm the one that represent them on this stuff. All right, Kurt and I covered this already, so I don't need to repeat it, I don't think, but we met Sunday with Speaker Fahey. I mentioned I don't think that she'll be our champion on this, but I think it was really good to put it on her radar. It was clear that we were the first ones to talk with her about this, which is what we want. So if she hears about it from others, at least she'll have our perspective first.
Yeah, I just had the feeling she really did listen. She
Good.
wasn't
the songs. So,
Right,
which is
that was
good.
nice, yeah.
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 Real fun.
That's always been my impression of her too, is that she's certainly listening and.
Yeah.
She wants you to know that she.
Yeah. I don't know what her exact politics are, but she represents a fairly moderate area. It's Alvador, kind of out your way up to JC,
We
so
speak all
there's
languages.
a lot of mix there, and hopefully, she kind of represents that in her thoughts and opinions. Related to that, Oputa Lobby Day, this has been talked about a couple times. I just want to flag it for you though. Danelle is arranging legislative meetings for each utility on April 23rd. Our list is by far the longest. I guess it's by virtue of our territory, but these are all the folks that she's lining up for that day. So 3 senators, 5 representatives, including again Speaker Fahey. I believe how this works is what she explained to me in the past. Each utility has sent the GM plus 2 or 3 board members. So if this is something that you're interested in, maybe we can coordinate on who exactly wants to go and be a part of this. Obviously, we want to make sure we've got messaging down and which issues we want to cover and all that too. So there'll be some legwork to get prepared for it. But just put that date on your radar if you're interested and go and let me know. Or Kurt know.
Yeah, I think I'm interested. I'm just looking at my calendar.
Yeah, I too am interested.
Okay.
See what's going on up there, talk to these people.
Yeah, I think it's basically an all-day thing on the 23rd.
Hopefully the weather will be good.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that, but just wanted to make sure that that was on radar. Year-to-date load data. So we've been watching closely kind of how things came in. We've heard the high bills this month, and I thought this was kind of interesting perspective. Rob put this together recently. This just shows the usage per day per customer, which is, a metric that kind of tracks with our total load, but a slightly different way. So far to date, we are ahead of every year over the last 5, other than 2023, which I guess I forgot was a massive load year, very cold winter that we had back then. 2022 was also pretty strong, and 24 was just way down. So what we're hearing and seeing, I think, from customers is some just the consistent cold, but also that comparison to last year is just really tough, whether you look at the outage or you look at
Yeah.
the lower load that we just had in general throughout the winter time last year. So far, it doesn't seem like the high bills have been too much for our customer service team. They've been handling the calls pretty well. They have energy services available if we need them to, so it seems manageable.
I had quite a long, because I'm on the local hood pages. And somebody was, oh, it's tight. So I went on there and explained how, yes, Bonneville PG is 50%, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I also said, just call customer service. They're wonderful
Yeah,
people. They
they
can
are.
walk you through it, And we'll see, because most people just want to convince, but
Yeah, it
Well, there
is.
was no power. The power was shut off during
Right.
24. It's a no-brainer.
That's easy to forget.
And it's also warm right now, or
Right.
it was last week.
Yeah.
People are getting bills and they don't remember what it was a month ago.
Yeah,
or yesterday.
it gets harder and harder as it gets nicer outside. We've been looking at how this translates into our financial picture. So January surprisingly was down a little bit in sales. We think that's got more to do with some December kind of spilling in. December was pretty warm. I don't know if you remember back then, but the cold didn't really hit us until the new year. So we missed budget by a little bit in January. February is yet to come. We'll see where all those sales kind of get in. It's always an adventure to predict which months see the impact of the high bills, but I'm fairly confident February and March will be pretty strong sales months. We definitely spent a lot on power in February, a lot of load. So we had to cover that in the marketplace, but
Pricing wasn't terrible. I think we averaged about $70 for the month in February, but it was a lot of volume. So we ended up, I think, near $800,000 in wholesale purchases for the month.
Reminder that we budgeted conservatively, so you can see pretty much every month we're expecting to be favorable to budget here, but we'll be watching it just to make sure that, this last cold spell comes through the right way. Very early signs on where things are headed there. Okay, windstorm recap. This goes back a couple weeks now, but we haven't been together in this format since then, so those gusts really caused some havoc. boy, sorry again, Patty.
I won the prize.
Yeah.
All the trees in the district around your house.
Yeah, the lineman told me I won the prize.
You did. Benita and trees, I got another one here I'm gonna talk about for a minute. So this all started when we lost transmission in the Mohawk Valley. Charles was the first to flag it for me. That was kind of the biggest impact that we saw. They got that back eventually, and then our crews were able to kind of clean most everything up by the evening hours. The one surprise that came though was we had, when I'm terming unforced air out in Benita that took out basically the whole city. You may not even have been aware of
No,
this.
don't tell me, it was just SOL.
Yeah, you were out in your car hanging on. The whole city of Benita was out, and I'll get into why here in just a second. It relates to a problem tree that we have tried to trim over and over again, but kind of had issues with. I have reached out to the city now to see if we can get some help, and this is kind of a look at what we're dealing with. So this is Territorial, the main thoroughfare out there. One is zoomed out and one is zoomed in, but this is a maple tree.
Uh-huh.
It is encroaching on our lines and has been for some time.
It's not oak.
That's
I don't
maple.
think it's maple.
It's not maple. Cottonwood?
No, it's not. It's not.
Could be an ash.
Sorry, I'm not an arborist.
It could be an ash. It's another hardwood. I don't think it's maple or ash.
No,
I think it's an ash.
I don't know. We'll find an arborist and make a ruling.
Could
I'll
be,
go
yeah.
look at it when it has leaves.
The point is, they are encroaching on our lines out with this tree, and we've tried to have our trimmers out there, and the community apparently has very strong feelings about this tree and other.
Particularly the people that live right around in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
particular tree block area.
Yeah. So want to be sensitive to that, but we also have to be able to have proper clearances. So I reached out to the city administrator out there. I told him, hey, not trying to stir up an hornet's nest, but this is our line that goes straight to the substation and takes out a lot of people when things happen. And that's what happened when we lost it the other night is one of these limbs fell into our lines and kind of took the whole thing down. And created frankly a pretty big public safety issue too. We had reports the tree was glowing.
Oh, jeez.
Not stuff that you want to see, so.
How did the mayor take it when you brought it up Friday?
She was supportive of trying to help, yeah.
Good.
They were in a city council meeting when that went down.
Oh, really?
Power went out, so.
Yeah.
Good, that's a good.
Yeah.
that's good.
Um,
timing.
so, I don't know, best case scenario, we take the whole thing out, but if not, we need to be able to have proper clearances.
Is it on private property or city property?
Yeah, it's on there's a Jehovah's Witness church right there that it sits right across from the fire station, so kind of a prime area, and I get it's visible in town and people don't want us cutting it, but we gotta have more conversation about that, and I'm hopeful, Matt said he was gonna look into it, and he'll actually be here tonight, his son's getting a scholarship award, so we can.
But looking at that is basically, we would take obviously the half that goes towards the
Right.
line. Still keep the other part of the tree, should be fine, maybe take one limb.
One leg of the school
Yeah,
mark.
Yeah, and then we can kind of let it go towards the other way and they can have it when it falls over, but.
You take that half off.
We don't have the option of doing what we did with the Mary.
Yeah, maybe.
It will.
Because what we did there is we just went around the block.
Yeah, we went around the block and, you could probably maybe alley arms things, but the look at that tree is it's going to most likely rot at the base and it's gonna come over and no matter how you frame it, it's gonna come over. That part of the tree needs to come out.
It's a maple, they're not a long-lived tree.
Nope.
Have we worked on it, see if it's got any
Yeah.
Sell point. Absolutely.
We could look and see if there's a condition there. I don't know what all the politics are out there. I just know that it's been very difficult. Dell, our serviceman, I rode out here with him and he just told me how hard it's been to try to even trim it, so.
So is that on the Jehovah's Witness piece? So that's who we're dealing with?
Are they against the
Yeah,
trimming
I think it's more
themselves?
the community that didn't like it when we tried.
Yeah.
What was that, Brian?
Is it, I mean, are they against trimming it, or do you know?
I think, I don't think the property owner is as much. My understanding is some of the community owners out there have been. They're very protective of their trees.
The private landowners
to the
is
left.
liable if a car harms somebody.
Yeah. Well, it's just,
They're the theory.
it was the whole city out for what, 4 hours or something? 5 hours?
Probably three or four.
Okay.
A multi-trunk tree though, where each of the limbs lean is a dangerous tree.
It doesn't look in great condition either, so we'll keep working it. I just wanted to make you aware that this is one where we could be doing better and having to take the whole city out is not a great look, so.
Maybe I'll go chat
Yeah,
Cause they're all feeling real sorry for me.
well, I thought you, well, that's what happens. Here's an example of what happens.
I mean, just, if you can, I mean, honestly, I'm looking at that tree and you can see the
Oh,
other,
yeah, no,
the right side of it is leaning away from our line.
I know.
I think, you know, kind of splitting the baby, lack of a better term, would
Right,
be to
right.
take that entire
Side
piece
off.
off, and then there maybe one small leg, and then the tree will actually start to grow, and we can just side trim it into perpetuity until it
No,
goes over in the.
I know, yes, I'll go chat.
Okay, yeah,
Do you believe in cutting trees down around your house now?
I clear cut the back right now. I'm done.
well, part of it, having this conversation now is while the outage is still fresh in mind.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't have to live through that,
Yeah.
that wasn't
In
required,
fact, one of those people called me.
yeah,
Give me
okay,
sympathy.
well, we have a solution here.
I'll reach out,
Let
I'll
us
reach
trim
out.
it.
You know, I like them. They're great people, but
Yeah,
I understand the love of the tree gods.
Yeah,
They're
I get it.
druids.
I
They're
get it.
druids.
Plus, I think that taking 12,000 volts probably didn't do it any good.
That's true.
that's true.
So I'm just saying, it's probably on borrowed time.
I just think the bugs didn't have a good night.
So quite a few years ago, but
What's in the bar?
my company, we widened Sixth Street through Eugene. And if you remember the big,
Oh, I remember the hullabaloo over that, I remember.
yeah,
next
so,
thing,
so
yeah.
we had an arborist, we cut them down. The tree over 4 feet in diameter had about 4 inches of live growth
Right.
around it.
I seen that happen in the yard.
Well, that's what the big trees are like in Europe and stuff. That's what they do. The inside rots out and
Yeah,
that part just
but
keeps
that-
going.
Maples are famous for that.
All right, well, we'll keep on that, thank you, Patty, for
Yeah, I would
volunteering.
definitely reach out to
Yeah.
Naum and Jeff.
All right, a couple Bonneville updates. I mentioned some good feelings coming out of there last week. The market decision was celebrated by everyone in public power. Interestingly, Oputa also got a note through Roger Klein from Puget Sound Energy, which is officially not made a decision, but is kind of in a similar position. They are positioned where they not had load growth, or they've had more load growth than they can handle. One of the two is making their decision lean toward SPP. So they are on our side here, which is great. They're kind of the one IOU that's holding out from this whole California debacle that's developing down there.
They've always been an outlier.
Yeah, they're a little smarter there, I think.
Cambridge Island.
Yeah, you probably saw this, but Bonneville was also allowed to hire back on 90 probationary employees.
Saw that.
So that was nice. The work that Randy Hardy and others have been doing, he did go on for quite a while at
He
PBC
did.
about all this. He's not afraid to let people know what he's thinking, for sure. Seems to be enough chatter that it's working to help out. Still some uncertainty around long-term hiring though. This reduction in force action is kind of on everyone's mind. That could mean more longer-term employees being removed. So we'll see.
They said today that they tentatively insulated them from
Did they?
flood reduction.
Oh, good.
Of course, it was in
Clearing up.
clearing
I
up.
hadn't read that.
Yeah, I saw it.
Good, glad to hear that. So hopefully, the message is getting through that, it's fine to try to be efficient, but you're not saving money with Bonneville and we want to do it the right way, make sure we get in the right positions. And work continues apace on the provider of choice contracts. We still hear from our Bonneville account rep every day, so somebody's working down there, it's good. We will do a deeper dive into contract terms scheduled next month. So we came in with a very brief product overview. We'll expand on that, plus go into contract terms in April here with the board, so you know what's coming. Okay, that brings up things I've been hearing about. One question has been the future relationship with TEA when we go here. Rob attended their annual symposium last week, got to hang out with the TEA guys for a while and brought this up. I'll let him talk if he has things to add, but he did mention this in our staff update that we obviously have a change in October 1st this year with our Bonneville product. TEA has, some options in terms of what they could do for us. Service to Halsey really depends on Cascade and whether they want to continue offering or providing scheduling through TEA or to go with somebody else. If it was through TEA, we would kind of be the go-between to allow that to happen. White Creek resale and scheduling, likely we would continue to have TEA help us with that through the end of the contract in December of 2027. TEA also said there's some load tracking and forecasting stuff they can do, and then some kind of market intelligence that we could ask for if we build up to the new contract, but. Initially, I think the only hard requirement would be that White Creek resale and scheduling, while we currently have that product still under our disposal. Long term, there may not be much here for us, and I think we've communicated that, but I wanna say they've been a good partner, and so I appreciate the dialogue about what this could look like in the future. We just need to kind of dive into what our needs are actually gonna be post load following world, and then have a new contract in place that reflects that.
And even if it, peters down, if there's some small line or whatever, because who knows what's gonna happen in
Sure.
10 years, 20 years.
I think
And they're
TA,
pretty smart people.
yeah, even on the West Coast, TA is gonna maintain a pretty good presence. They've
Yeah.
got a lot of inroads in California, and they're doing a lot of work for those clients down that way, so they'll be out here, I think.
Yeah, I would
indefinitely.
encourage some sort of
Yeah.
continued something.
How do they get compensated for the, say, I don't know what's gonna happen, but say it's just White Creek that they, how do they get compensated by the hour, by the percentage?
It's a set schedule it's a monthly fee right now that for scheduling White Creek, we pay them a certain amount every single month for that.
Subscription.
And I think, I don't know how the resale stuff works, the negotiation and all that.
It's kind of, some of this is a little, it kind of all blends together in some ways, right? But there's like a top level resource management agreement. And then there are task orders under that. So we have task orders that govern all of this work. We have one for the Western Resource Adequacy Program. We've got one for Cascade. We've got all these different ones. And so I think we've talked about it, and like it might make sense to kind of scrap the existing one and just like if we're going to go bare bones with them, probably just say like, well, let's have something new and just really focus on what are the requirements for that particular work and the pricing associated with that.
What's the issue on Halsey?
So they're going to bid on the scheduling and the actual power supply for Halsey after October 1st. So with the product change, there are a number of things that are impacting Cascade Pacific Pulp specifically. So when a load following utility is serving an NLSL, they're subject to a lot of different things that they've never been subject to before. TEA has a lot of experience with that, with some other in the region, and so they may be the ones that pick up. They already do the scheduling for them now, but they may pick up the power supply component of that. They're talking to at least one other entity about that service too. So they may decide to go somewhere else, and not use TEA at all.
And how sad would we be if we lost?
If we lost the customer, not too sad.
I don't think-
That would be okay, but we don't, they're always gonna be our customer. Unless they decide to pursue annexation with another utility. So if it's TEA or if it's somebody else that's providing scheduling power supply to them, they're still going to be our customer. And
We just get out of the loop almost
Yeah,
entirely.
Aren't there a few residential customers up there too?
4 or 5.
Seven.
Oh, several?
7.
Oh, 7. I didn't know
Yeah.
very many.
Well, it is an awkward relationship for us. It doesn't really align with the rest of our business. We don't get a ton of benefit from it. We do get a basic charge every month that helps offset some of the costs, but it's kind of an orphan territory that, I think there were some big dreams when it was first acquired back in the early 2000s that we would, get all kinds of riches from having this big industrial load, and really all it's been is a sleeve for them to access the marketplace. That's what they wanted. They paid for everything.
That territory up there is a mix between consumers and Pacific Power?
It's mostly Pacific and Halsey, I think.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
Halsey Pacific Corp.
Yeah.
So there is CPI.
So if TEA was their scheduler and they decided to provide power from someplace and it flows through us,
Yeah. Our transmission.
yeah,
so where do we get revenue from that?
so we have an electric service contract with both of the mills up there. And so it really lays out like what we get paid for. And so a lot of most of the stuff that directly goes into our bank account is the basic charge. We get the public benefits charge from them that helps cover, that helps.
So it's just
like,
someone else's electricity.
Yeah, and so then everything else is just a pass through. So if we get cost, we expect there will be some added cost from Bonneville to serve this load as a load following utility. And so we're just gonna pass all of that through. And so it's really, and without any markup or anything like that, it's just.
Every month they do a detailed split between our transmission and the Cascade transmission, so they get billed what they're driving in terms of cost on our
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, it's really,
It is,
it's really funky the way that
not sure we would have done this again if we had,
it's extremely complicated and it's getting more complicated.
Jeff Shields.
it was Jeff Andrews.
Oh.
All right.
The orange one,
Let me bring this home. We are trying to get to 5:30, but I only have a little bit to go. So, Wag Energy was on site, yesterday and again today. I met with them this morning when I was back. They met with Northwest Natural and their contractor, Wag's contractor, Douglas Pipeline, yesterday to talk about the interconnection and how that might work. Also today met with SCS Engineers, which is our engineering firm that's done the gas collection system design. So they got to talk about how that might look. They dove into a lot of assumptions around the gas flows with and without the IMERV. Some potential good news is it appears there is some upside in the gas that might be available given WAG's technology. The SCS report, they drew those curves for us that had the IMERF scenario and it kind of showed it cratering and flatlining. That assumed a certain reduction because of the nitrogen content and because of WAG's ability to take more nitrogen essentially. It looks like there'll be more volume potentially available to run through
That's
the
great.
RNG process. So that was one good.
Therefore less pollutants.
Yeah, less of everything, so we need to do a lot more modeling, but we're getting SCS involved on that because they did the original study for us. Lane County staff was supposed to be discussing this with the commissioners this week. I'm not sure if that's happening or not. We'll have to find out.
I'll call Commissioner Lowe.
Okay. Might be helpful to know. I was gonna give them a few days and then maybe at the end of the week, reach out again. I think we're at the stage now where we need to have all three parties come to the table and start talking. So I don't know what direction they're being given.
That needs to start from the commission.
Yeah, that could be helpful to check in with them.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Would they, if they're gonna discuss it with commissioners, it has to be meeting, wouldn't it be? Can they have? can they have-
No, I mean, that's like Kyle discussing something with you outside of the meeting, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, we do know.
Yeah.
We do know that there is direction sometimes outside of board meetings.
Yeah, my impression was it was gonna be part of a public meeting, but I don't know.
Well, it could be, the reason their agenda should come out tomorrow. Thursday.
For next week, yeah.
Next week, it comes out.
Dan said they'd be doing it this week, so, but it wasn't on the agenda, and it didn't sound like
Right.
the one commissioner you talked
No,
about.
when Lovell's the president, he should know what's on the agenda.
But hey,
Yeah, make that call.
I'm trying not to be too persistent about it, but I will hopefully by the end of the week try to, it'd be nice to get a meeting on the calendar.
No, and I think we're at a sensitive time. We
Yeah.
need to get through this bottleneck here
Mhm.
so that we can see the road out in front of us.
I hope they can at least come to the table. There's so much benefit to everybody involved here. We just need to start talking. And I hope they see that too.
Well, a lot of benefit.
Yeah. Okay, track machine update, the Maruka, let's see. So,
Sounds like a new kind of candy bar.
oh. Following last month's discussion, we did go out and get a quote for a new one of these things. Brace yourselves. Heavy,
425.
370.
Oh, heck.
That seemed like a lot.
I thought over $500,000.
Um,
Can we see
That's-
the picture again?
That's less than,
It's up 50,000.
You guys-
Here.
that's less than a bigger dirt truck.
yeah.
So we had never intended to buy a new one, but this gives you, it gives you a perspective on how things are inflating. We just found a new one, or one with a little low hours, and it's in New Hampshire right now. So it's
A used
in
one.
the 200 and, it's a 2021, and it's in the $220,000 range. But you know, in order to get something that's got some hours on it, I don't wanna spend that kind of money without sending somebody back there, actually possibly doing a physical walking around. And so I might put somebody in a flight mechanic too, send them out there, but.
How many hours does that one have?
It was 271 when they sent it out to rental, so it's got more than that, it's been out for the season, so we could have, 500 miles.
Why would anybody sell such a lower hour machine?
What's that?
Why would anybody sell such a lower hour machine?
Well, they can bring them in from their rental fleet and then they can say, you know what, we have some interest in selling them. They'll just buy a new one and rotate it in, on their rental fleet. They don't wanna have a bunch of junk out there, right? So they'll run it for obviously 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and then turn around and make their money.
So, Mark, when we bought that big Condor truck, we sent someone to go look at it.
No, what we
Was
did.
that a mistake, not having someone go look at it?
No, I don't think it was, only because I really believed how we did it was due diligence. We had an international mechanic
We had someone look at it.
that went down. We didn't have the guy his mechanic, we had a mechanic that was an international mechanic, look at it. And then we also had an Altec technician go take a look at the boom. They gave us a list of things that was fixed. They did actually fix some stuff, like about $9,000 worth of stuff before we bought it. So we felt it was really a good deal. When we got it, the whole undercarriage was pretty rusted. Probably from salt in the roads. It only had like 30-some thousand miles on it. And then there was, I think part of that rust was some of the sensors that actually level that sort of things had corroded. We replaced them and then the engine went.
Lost the engine?
It's got that International Max Force, 30-some thousand miles on it. So,
No, that was only a $90,000 rig though. And
yeah, so it was very,
it was only intended to get us through that one project too. So we kind of did that, but yeah, that's.
but to buy it new, it's $600,000-700,000, right?
So what-
They don't have
So that $50,000 more, what kind of warranty comes with a brand new Maruka?
I don't know, I mean, it could be a couple of years. But it's such a specialty rig that you'll use, a dozen times a year. I don't wanna really go and spend $370,000 for something
don't
like that.
have
When
to.
when you need it, you need it. And we will use it more than we probably anticipate. It's kinda like when you get a mini or an excavator, you're like, oh, do we really need it? Pretty soon it's like, oh my gosh, the tree crews use it and everybody uses it. So it's, I just want to spend the board's money or the district's money in the proper way, and I feel that if we can get a good deal on a used machine, that will be in good shape. This is a 15-year minimum probably purchase. It'll be around for a while. I'm gonna try to put that in our big bucket under cover, probably out there in the Pleasant Hill substation, put it under cover so it keeps them preserved also. But yeah, you can just see the inflation. So I was talking to send an email out to Kyle and Sarah a little bit, and I might try to get something either to the April 1st board meeting or maybe the April 15th board meeting, and just give me a do not exceed number that I can come up with, maybe 280,000, something like that, where I can get something, a good used machine that's got low hours and not spend $370,000. I'd spend $370,000 on a brand new digger truck that's going out of the yard every day. Right, because but I just can't justify $307,000 for a truck or a vehicle. It's not gonna be so.
So if we did want to go the used route, I think there's challenges in that environment. They typically don't last very long. You've got to respond quickly. So what we thought we would do is bring back some kind of proposal next month about a not to exceed value and get pre-approval under certain conditions. We're able to do our due diligence. We send somebody out to look at it, those kind of things. So that's for consideration. We can always go the new route, but I think the perspective right now is it's pretty hefty price tag for something that isn't getting used every single day. We can still talk about that too.
Better tell Jim to get on the plane. Cause at 5 o'clock, you may tell him he's getting on a plane if you want to have.
All right, no.
Actually, got the go bike.
Right, you got
Hey,
this
listen,
12-inch crescent.
2 days.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's what I gotta find out from these guys. I'd like to have the option to be able to say, okay, for $10,000, I'm gonna give you $10,000. It's gonna be reimbursed if our when we go back there and look at it, we don't like it. The bogies are all messed up on it, it's rusted, whatever. It got rolled. I don't know what the hell we're gonna find, but if it works out, that $10,000 goes towards the price of the machine. We don't lose it. But if we don't like, if it doesn't pass our muster, then we get our money back, is what I'd like to see.
Placeholder.
But I gotta be able to,
At 10 o'clock this morning, sorry.
yeah, but I've gotta be able to.
Well, that literally happened to us when we did that last one. It was
Oh.
actually under 250. It was in my.
It was $222,000. I was absolutely heartbroken over it. I went home and drank.
We were working it with Chad, trying to make sure that the agreement made sense. It was like a couple hours too long and then we lost it a little bit. So it's tricky. We'll see. Hopefully we can find something used that works, but that gives us a benchmark for if we wanted to go new.
When we got 9 months before we might use it, might need it.
We'd use it in, you know, like, if we had it right now, like we could do, you know, things that are holding off an irrigation season. That you can't get a truck out there right now. We can go out there and do things like that, some maintenance
I have a
things.
job like that as we speak.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's kind of one of those things, so, but it's just having the ability to be nimble and be able to, not have to mess around with this. Cause they have a boilerplate contract that they just want you to sign in order to lock it up, right? And so it's nothing too crazy, but I think Chad kind of was a little wonky with it, but asking them to sign something that they've never seen before, they're like, you either want it or you don't want it. You know, or you wanna lock it up or you don't wanna lock it up. I got like 10 people but they had somebody right in the queue right behind us.
Beware any machine that comes with free jumper cable.
Exactly. Yeah,
We'll bring it back a proposal next month for your consideration. Okay, last slide here, upcoming board meeting, we're gonna be together April 1st. It's not a joke.
Just kidding.
3 o'clock. We're gonna be looking at several things, bond issuance resolution vote. We're gonna talk about that momentarily here. We'll do a BPA provider choice process update, talk about contract terms, and then scheduled to have the executive session for the GM performance review that night. I just got my self-evaluation over to Alicia, so hopefully she gets that to me. Don't kill me for the length. A lot of attachments.
we never look at that.
Okay, that's what, yeah, it's all indexed so you can see.
Here's a picture of
You
myself.
can pick things out,
Yeah.
you don't have to read the whole thing. Okay, all right, that's all I got.
These poor people didn't wait forever.
Yeah, thanks for holding on, guys.
Okay, so bond issuance discussion.
Okay, I don't know, Sarah, you wanna come up front here too? So we got all of our partners online, thanks for hanging in there. So I think you've met both Scott and Stacy, you haven't met Sean yet. So Sean, do you wanna just say hello and kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. This is, my name's Sean Keats. I'm a director at Barclays in Seattle. I'm actually a native Oregonian. Way back, you could tell by the hair, that was quite a long time ago. And recently got on board, so I want to thank the team, Kyle and Sarah, for their confidence, and looking forward to working with you guys on bringing this financing to market in about a month and a half.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sean.
Sean is the guy who will really be interfacing with the buyers of our debt, and you know, he'll be the one directing traffic in terms of lining everybody up. So key part of this whole picture.
Talks us up.
Yeah, that's right. He makes us look good. Okay,
It's an easy
Scott.
job, like being the Maytag repairman.
Good deal. So let's see, Scott, you have a presentation. Do we have that in here, or do we want to turn control over to?
We'll turn it over to
You
Scott.
want to share your screen, Scott?
I do, that'd be great.
We're gonna go through kind of some high level issues around the bond issuance and hopefully get some feedback from the board on what your comfort level is with various different aspects of how this will work, and I'll let him cover that here. All right,
All right, is that showing up on the screen?
we got it here.
Okay. Well, thank you again for having us here today. So just a quick update. So you have met Sean. So we went through that process starting, I guess, in December. Got responses back in January. We held interviews, and again, Barclays was ultimately selected. Other things going on. So the first document drafts have been distributed and reviewed. So thank you to your staff and Foster Garvey for getting that together. So that's the preliminary official statement, which will be the marketing document, the supplemental resolution. So you have a master resolution, and the supplemental then adds some specificity to some of the things that we're doing here. Also may suggest some changes to that master resolution. So again, those being drafted by Stacy at Foster Garvey and reviewed by the team. As you know, you adopted the bond ordinance on February 18th, so that 30-day period expires on March 20th. And then we are continuing to draft and review documents as we go. We'll start drafting a rating presentation soon. We'll talk a little more about rating agency later on in this presentation. And of course, we'll come back to the board April 1 for your review and hopeful approval of the supplemental resolution. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and I know it was in the staff report as well. So I guess 3 major topics that we have. One is the borrowing amount. So in the bond ordinance, you've approved issuance up to $40 million, previously considering a $35 million issuance. But again, you have that additional $5 million of headroom. So we'll show a couple scenarios where we show a borrowing of 35 million and 40 million. There was also some question, could we issue that additional $5 million and potentially, say if you got a FEMA reimbursement and wanted to pay back some of that early, could you do that? So we've run some numbers. I think when you look at the comparison, it may not provide the whole picture, but again, we'll show you what we've run. Topic 2 is the reserve accounts. So historically, revenue bonds were issued with reserve accounts, and those are typically sized at about a 1 year's worth of debt service. Now, depending on the shape of the debt, it could be a little bit different, but again, that's about the ballpark of what we're talking about. Bond market's been moving away from reserve accounts, but for electric utilities, we still see them, and it is one of the factors in the Moody's methodology contributing 5% to the rating. And if the bonds do have a reserve account, it's likely that a surety would be available. So you wouldn't necessarily deposit money into an account. You'd purchase an upfront policy from an insurer, again called a surety, that would insure that surety insure that reserve account instead of contributing the cash. And you do have that actually on your 2013 bonds, so the district has some experience with obtaining those type of things, which we will assist in getting. So we'll look at a couple of scenarios just to compare if you were to have a reserve account and it was cash funded, if we did a surety, or if you had no reserve, and we'll assume that you maintain your current rating. And again, because it can be impactful whether or not you have one to your rating, we then just show you, well, what would happen then if the rating actually went lower, but you still maintain no reserve. So we'll show that in a moment. And then finally, bond payment structure. So there's a multitude of ways to structure the debt, and really looking at your particular situation. Again, the bonds can be structured in a lot of different ways. So we can amortize it over certain periods. We can shape it in different ways. But we'll show you here some fairly typical looks. One is a 20 and a 25-year amortization. And then the shaping we'll show you is what we call either a level or a wrapped. Level debt service means equal payments on your 2025 bonds, for instance, each and every year. Wrapped means that we look at your existing debt and structure the new debt around it, really trying to shape it for level aggregate payments. Finally, just a couple of quick hitters we'll have at the end. Items being looked at, considered. One is bond insurance, another is rating agencies, and then lastly, principal payment dates. So with that, let me turn to the next slide, and I hope not to, sorry, before we get into some of those other things, just a quick review of your outstanding debt. I know you're quite familiar with this, just because the shape will be showing up on a lot of the slides coming up, your outstanding debt, your 2013s and 2021 bonds. So when we're talking these next several ones, you'll see this shape over and over again in gray bars representing your outstanding debt. Okay, so I will zoom in on certain portions of these, but let me give you the quick overview before we do that. So as mentioned, the district has been considering $35 million deposit to your project fund. The bond ordinance allows an issuance of up to $40 million principal amount. So there is an opportunity to increase the issuance if the district so chooses. Typically, when bonds are sold, they'll have a 10-year call provision, meaning you cannot pay off those bondholders for the first 10 years. And then starting at the 10th year, at any point thereafter, you can pay them off. So beyond that typical 10-year call, then there was a question, well, could you pay off $5 million of that at any time? And that is what is called an extraordinary optional redemption. And we'll show that here in this last example. So let me, I guess, zoom in on one of these, and maybe first we'll spend a little time on this first column, because a lot of what you'll see here is, of course, repeated in these scenarios, and it'll also be repeated in the scenarios coming up. So again, just to try to orient ourselves, here's the outstanding debt here in gray, the new debt here in blue, the bars representing the principal and interest payments each and every year. And then let me come down here. We'll then show you a sources and uses table. So how much principal amount do you need to issue? There's something called bond premium that we're assuming. Just real briefly, that's where investors in the current market basically buy up the interest rate or coupon on a bond, and in return for them getting a higher coupon rate and giving them additional cash flow each and every year, they pay you an upfront payment. And so that's what this premium is. It allows you to then reduce the amount of principal you actually issue. So again, that's par and premium at top. So the sources of the funding, which will come from the bond proceeds, and then how does that get allocated? So you'll see over and over again a project fund deposit, and really that is the number we're eyeing. And when we talk about funding 35 million or 40 million, this is what we are looking at here. Now, again, to clarify, your ordinance, when it's talking about a $40 million not to exceed, that is this amount here, your principal amount. But again, we don't want to get crossways with you. We're not trying to be clever here. We're only going to provide you with the amount of funding that you need and that's authorized. Finally, we have then estimated costs of issuance. This is typically, or we have this structured at basically 1.5% of the principal amount, plus, at least in these cases that we're showing you here, we're assuming that we have purchased a surety and that we have a reserve account. So that again is included in these costs of issuance. Finally, some of the details that we'll have in each of these, when we're planning to issue these bonds, what the principal amortization is. So this will be repeated over and over again. What's the total debt service? So if we come up here and sum up all of these blue bars, what does that add up to? So that's, in this case, $67.5 million. What is the 2026 payment? So you see the 4.7, that's this bar here. And then what happens after that debt service spike? And that's all these payments here. Finally, average life, that gives us a sense of how quickly is the principal paid out. So that's about the midpoint of when principal is paid out. All in true interest cost, that's like an APR on your home. So it's kind of a blended cost that takes into account the interest rates and yields and all of the issuance expenses. So let me, again, scroll back up here. So what we're trying to show here, I guess, is the difference between a typical $35 million borrowing and a $40 million borrowing. And I guess just visually, you can see the differences here. I'll move down to show you what does that mean from a total debt service standpoint. So between the two, again, we've added $5 million to your project fund. It adds a little more to the cost of issuance too, but that's the main difference. So the difference between the two scenarios, in the neighborhood of $8.5 million or so. And you can see the difference in the 2026. I mean, basically about $300,000 of additional payments each and every year for the life of the bonds. Scrolling over here to compare then this case where we issue a $40 million with a par call, the 10-year par call, and $40 million where everything still has a par call, but we've added on an optional redemption so that you can pay off $5 million early. Still depositing $40 million. You'll notice actually that total debt service and annual costs have actually gone down a little bit, and also all in true interest cost has gone down a little bit. I won't dive into the details on this. The $5 million in this case would actually be sold with a different coupon structure. It would be sold at a lower coupon structure. So what's not really showing up in this information is the fact that since I'm selling at a lower coupon, just that $5 million, its call option is a little bit less. So you would be less likely to call these bonds that are at 4% than the ones that I have listed over on the left-hand side that would be priced at 5%. But again, it's not very apparent here. There's also a potential market penalty, which we've not built into here. It's not quite, I don't think, quantifiable at this stage of the game. But I think for our purposes, what we're really seeking from the staff, and I think maybe the staff from the board, is just a sense on whether the $35 million borrowing is of interest. Is it the $40 million? And then how interested would you be in potentially paying off an additional $5 million if you borrowed it, which again might be this case here. And before I move on to the next one, I'll pause.
And then I think that great layout there, Scott. The thing that we talked about before the meeting was we don't have a recommendation here necessarily. This kind of comes down to the board's comfort level with the possibility that FEMA doesn't come through. And if that doesn't happen, we know we're going to need to bolster our cash reserves, our operating cash reserves at some point. This is a potential method to help with that. The extra $5 million we could use for that purpose. Kind of roundabout, we can't say that that's what we're doing necessarily because of our bond resolution, but in effect, it would help bolster our cash reserves at the end of the day. That's not the only option. You know, we could also wait and see and potentially do some slightly higher rate increases moving forward to build up the reserves again. We could do less capital than we've talked about and try to make some cuts. So this is definitely not us coming in and saying 40 million is the right number. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right number. It really comes down to a comfort level with the board and what you think you want to do with that cash reserve situation.
Well, I don't think we need the $5 million upfront option because if we do get the money from FEMA, we can just save it in our cash reserves and use it to offset a future rate increase, which is easier to deal with than that.
Yeah.
I can't speak to whether do we need the extra $5 million for, capital work or don't.
That's an interesting thought I had too, was just, we talked about a building and land acquisition and would an extra $5 million help on that front, maybe. For me though, it's really the event that FEMA doesn't come through. We don't get the FEMA money. We know our cash reserve levels are not where they need to be. So this extra $5 million could kind of help in that case. But if we did get it, then I think we could look at other uses for that $5 million too, maybe in the form of land.
If we hung on to the extra $5 million, can we take money from this, buy the covenants and use it as cash reserves?
It's
the parameters of the loan.
in effect, we can do that because we have more capital work. It's kind of the way you define capital.
I get it.
So we could essentially use this for capital that would otherwise have been rate or revenue financed.
Right.
And that in effect bolsters our cash.
Frees up that
reserves.
revenue somewhere
I
else.
like the idea of plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Well, money probably isn't gonna get a whole lot cheaper for the next 30 years or 20 years, or who knows, but I mean, 4.5 or low fours is not a dreadful interest rate
That's true.
historically.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, borrowing the 40 million might not be a bad move.
Yeah, I mean, you get the one experience we had before in 21, you probably tried to urge us to go higher than we did at that point, so it tells us.
I can only do so much.
A couple things. Can we get a copy of his?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
It's hard for me
Yeah.
to absorb all of this. I
Yeah.
Of course, yeah,
understand. The other thing is using the 5 million, we've already got 8. You're using the same reasoning for the 8 million as now you're using it for the 5 million.
That's a good
On
point.
FEMA, you are.
These have
well,
strengths.
what I would say though is the 8 million is not something we're ever going to draw and use for cash reserves, it's for emergency purposes. We're not going to use that debt as a way to fund
It's
our
a future storm fund, if you will.
we're still, let's say we drew on the 8 million, say we drew 5 million of it, we're not just gonna let it sit there, we're gonna have to pay that back.
Right, I
So,
understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so and I don't have, I'm not sure on the 35 or 40
Yeah.
million, it's, I'm more interested in the cost and benefit of the reserve or the surety of that.
Mhm.
Um,
yeah,
Somebody's gotta tell me in money, how
Yeah.
much that, so we get a policy, we pay a surety
yeah,
100 grand. Are we, where's the benefit from that?
sure, I think Scott has some
Yeah, so
material
he
on
might,
that.
but when, yeah, this is great, but I'd like to be able to look at it.
You bet, yeah, we can provide all this to you, I know these are big decisions.
What is the surety cost as opposed to the cost of money if we put, a
Yeah,
rate increase to
yeah, the
build a
three-
reserve?
Yeah, he'll share it in just a second here, but the kind of short answer is that it's much more cost effective, we think, to buy the surety as opposed to actually funding a reserve ourselves. The cost is fairly minimal in terms of the potential, impact that we get. But there is a discussion about bond insurance, which is separate than the surety as well, and what that could do to our rating. And at that point, it does become a bit of a math equation, like if it gets you a better rating or causes you not to drop, then you should get it. If not, don't worry about it. But he's got those numbers coming up.
Okay.
I do.
Any other thoughts on this principle or not? We'll get you the material so you can think some more about it, but wanted to see if there's any other feedback on that.
I don't think it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking.
Okay.
I honestly think if we stayed at 35 million, we'd be fine. And the caveat is we always look at small rate increases if we needed the extra 5 million going forward. Meantime, we've got more time to see if we need it before we make the decision.
And
And it's simpler.
yeah,
Rather than having to do this and the
Yeah.
other coupons and all that stuff, I just don't see.
yeah, one of the things we are watching is just total debt service over time. And if we did want to go out and borrow again at some point, do we have the capacity to do that? If you start to stretch too much on the principal amount, it gets harder and harder. The one, just to pick up on your point again about the $8 million line of credit, to me, that is purely a liquidity tool. That is, if we get into a fix where we just don't have enough cash to meet our obligations in the short term, we would use that. We would never though keep that line of credit with a balance in a perfect world. Versus this tool, if we had the $5 million, we could use that to just replenish cash reserves, right? Does that make sense?
The 8 million, the next budget, you're gonna start figuring out a repayment schedule over a short period to make up for it.
Well, we have to, I mean, it's
If
a
we
short
do,
term line.
no, exactly.
The 5 million though that we would get from this could essentially flow right to our cash reserves and then it would be paid off over 20-25 years. So that's the difference in my mind. One is just a short term liquidity tool, the other is a bolstering of our cash reserves.
So the FEMA word being used in both of those. The FEMA word for the 8 million is, we'll get it, but we won't get it till October instead of June. The other
Yeah.
argument on this is we'll never get it. Is that,
That's basically
Is
right.
that-
Yeah, that's
I see where you're
basically
going.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what
I'm
I'm
trying
hearing.
to, I hear the same.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Well, it's an issue, because today Trump came out and said he's putting all of FEMA stuff to the states.
yeah.
And we might be stuck in that, I don't know.
I think we're losing some faith that that's gonna actually show up.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, it was like, well, let's just make do until it comes and that's where the line of credit would help. But if it's really not gonna happen ever, then it's a situation where we've gotta have a plan to get our cash reserves back up to a certain
In
level.
that case, the $5 million adder makes more sense, the green column.
Yeah. That's a tool. So it could be that, or it could be higher rate increases or some combination.
And by the same token, if we did go the green route and we do get the FEMA money, we just offset future rate increases with that.
Yeah.
A part of it. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be all of
Yeah,
it.
I think, rate pressure is gonna be ever present here,
Mhm.
and I'd like to not aggravate that.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I agree with that, and this is a way, you know, that we do kind of assume a little bit more. So the last column there, that extraordinary redemption option, that's something we can explore too, that if we do end up with more FEMA money than we expect, we could potentially pay that back. That would take our debt load down a bit. It's
But it's my feeling that without that, if we did get the FEMA money, we just offset rate increases with it.
yeah, that's an
I think we
option.
all agree rate increase is our last option.
Yeah,
I mean, it's easy enough to, to help the ratepayers by, we're just changing amortization over a period of time,
Yeah.
5 million for, in that case, stick with the green, get the
Yeah.
extra 5. And use that for a fudge number,
Yeah.
just in case things go on, and then if we do get the FEMA money, we just delay a rate increase a period of time,
Yeah.
to make up for the extra that comes in, if not, we're on board.
we'll get you the literature, we'll get you this
That
exact
would be
view,
ideal,
yeah. Because you can see the impact over, is this 20 years, 25
So
years?
50.
25.
25 years,
Yeah.
so it's the 5 million plus the extra cost of interest, which ends up kind of putting it closer to 8 million, something like that, yeah. So it does have an impact, there is a financing cost in there that we should just all be aware of, but I guess if you put a gun to my head, that's kind of where I'm coming down to, is that all this trouble to issue bonds, this is not a super fun process to go through, we don't
Why
have to do
not
it
get
very
it up while we're
often.
at it?
Maybe we do go after the slightly higher amounts.
My other comment is, I agree historically, the 4%, it looks pretty good.
Yeah,
Looking ahead.
Or you can look back, 2% looked pretty good too, didn't it?
Yes, it
Well, that's what I mean, you
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't
It's
think
like-
that anybody here that will never see that again in our lives.
Why we didn't borrow 70?
Oh,
I don't
Sure,
know
listen to
either,
someone.
we should have.
If I would.
Tennessee Valley, far billions.
the other piece of wisdom that Scott shared or knowledge that I think is worth reiterating is the 10-year call provision. So
Yes.
we can't refinance essentially for a 10-year period. So if rates do crater back down to 2%, we don't get to quickly turn around like you can on your house and refinance them. It's just something to be aware of.
But even
Right.
so, I think go forward.
Yeah.
uh,
10-year
one way or the other.
corral.
We seem to be working hard to get ourselves into a recession here, so who knows?
Well, I'm with Brian, I think you gotta go with the 40, I mean, I think it's better,
Yeah.
it makes sense to me.
I really don't think we need the early payment option because the blue column or the light blue column, because
Yeah,
if we have extra revenue, we can just offset rate increases with
That's
it.
a good point.
That
We can
gets rid of-
modulate that ourselves.
That gets rid of it a lot simpler, we can do it when and how we decide,
Yeah.
I think it makes everything simpler and cleaner.
One of the things we wanted to do also was look at our multi-year financial forecast and kind of look at these debt levels to see how much pressure it's putting on us down the road and whether our rate increases are keeping up
Yeah.
appropriately. So
Yeah.
that's the takeaway that we'll have between now and the next time we talk also.
So all of these comparisons are on a 25-year or 20.
Yes, and we'll talk about that in a second.
So
This is
that
obviously
to
the-
me would be a big difference on the term.
This is obviously the wrap option too, as we
Yeah,
retire. we'll buy.
Well, that's,
Just to make sure I was clear about
I
that.
don't see 27 to 50. Like,
What was that, Dan?
23 years, I thought I saw 2027 to
I
2050.
can't Be 24
you're
years.
looking at that line right there, Scott, that 27 to 50.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the principal amortization. So what I'm talking about is we're going from 2025 to 2050 on the issuance. So, but you're right, we're only amortizing in this case from 27 to 50.
That's because of the wraps.
I think you have some scenarios looking at 20 versus 25, Scott, coming up.
I do.
Okay, so we'll get to that too. That's another big assumption that we'll want to get.
There's one thing I want to point out too, when I first came on the board quite a few years ago, we were servicing, as I recall, a little over $4 million of debt then with no problems.
Yeah.
This isn't out of the range of our debt service that
Yeah.
we've ever had with Emerald.
It's
It's
true.
not a big jump up, but we've
No.
mirrored it as we paid off debt,
Yeah,
Exactly.
I want the public to understand that too, because it's not like we're taking on a big new debt load.
yeah, that's a great
We're
point.
just
No, we're just
maintaining the one we
managing
more or
on.
less have had for a long time.
Yeah, we paid off a lot of that 2013 issue
Yeah.
recently that caused our debt service to go way down. So we've got some capacity, which is why we can even have this conversation.
Yay, us.
And we've already talked about years ago, going longer term on this debt to amortize the cost of capital improvements is cheaper to ratepayers than paying for it out of rates immediately.
Yep.
Which is largely how it had been done up until the late.
We had been getting away from that for a very long time and we saw that affected
We
our
went through
rates.
the mathematics on that quite a bit until we realized that we were better off to do this and mirror the time it takes to pay for something to how long it lasts in the real world.
Our rates up until that last debt issue really were not super competitive compared to a lot of our peers. And since that time, as you've all been aware of, we haven't done nearly the same rate actions that we did prior. And part of that's because we're financing.
Take 5 years off, it's gonna help a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing some support for the $40 million option there, not a lot for the redemption piece. We'll go back and kind of look at how that would play out with our financial forecast to make sure that level of debt is appropriate. We'll get you all these materials so you can read them also offline, 'cause I know it's a lot to take in.
Yes.
Maybe I need to understand the payoff, the 5 million payoff, but I don't see no difference in the cost.
Yeah, there's not a lot, which was,
I don't know why you would do it.
it's very, Scott explained this to me, it took him probably 15 minutes and I still was a little confused, but I think it has to do with discounts and premiums and the way some of this works. He also said though that this probably doesn't incorporate some costs that you would get for a strange scenario like that, so I don't know. It probably doesn't reflect the all-in cost, is that fair, Scott?
I think you're right. And actually, I see Sean's come off mute, so I'm going to phone an underwriter and see if he wants to opine on that part.
I love it. I love it. So the idea here, yeah, the actual debt service, nominal debt service is the same. The opportunity cost you're giving up with the extraordinary redemption is we issue bonds at a discount rather than certain of the bonds we issue at a discount rather than a premium. So you'll notice that between the green and the blue scenarios, the premium has gone down, and you're thinking, okay, well, how is that bad? It's not bad, but later on, when you get to the call date, because we've issued these bonds at a discount, the potential savings in the future is rapidly diminished. So you're giving up the call optionality, future refunding opportunity later, and that's priced into the bonds now. That's the difference. So there's a monetary benefit. There's a present value valuation to that optionality, and that's baked into these numbers. And that's what you're essentially giving up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Or ask questions if not.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay. I would be remiss if I didn't observe that Scott and his firm is fond of saying that virtually every bond is refunded at some point in time. These are 25 potentially some other term year bonds with the 10-year call, and almost all bonds are refinanced at some point, because at somewhere along the way interest rates make sense. And even if interest rates don't go down between now and the call date, there's a yield curve, and because we are now 10 years forward in time, even if interest rates don't change, it will make sense to refund them later.
So in this case, moving from 25-year debt to 15-year debt, for instance.
Right. It's like when you get if you get a mortgage on your house, the 15-year term is a lower rate than the 30-year term. Same idea.
Sir, I have a question that just occurred to me. Don't we have a residual payment on the current bond, the current borrowed money we have?
Or residual payment?
Or didn't we have a balloon at the end of that?
Yeah,
I remember that.
I think he's modeled that in here. Scott, you wanna cover
Modeled
that?
it as a level payment,
Yeah.
but there is
Even though it's
a,
not.
That assumes a
potentially,
refinance of some
yeah.
type probably at that point.
Right. Yeah. So I have not modeled that, but you are correct. In 2036, the bank has a put option. So early in 36, they'll let us know whether they're going to basically force you to pay that off or not. So at that point, it can then, I think there's $12 million remaining at this point. It'll be then your choice as to whether, are you going to cash fund that, bond finance that, or otherwise. So this really, this is assuming that they allow you to keep it out, which is unlikely at this rate, depending on what rates are doing then. But I would say what's more likely is if they do call those bonds, you'll refinance it to something of a similar shape as what I'm showing here. So that's the assumptions I've made.
The shape you're showing us assumes we're going to do something to amortize it further on. Is that correct? The
So
balloon payment You've included it as if we'd amortized it beyond year 2036.
Correct. I have assumed exactly that the balloon payment has been amortized out to the final maturity of these bonds. If the bank does not exercise the put option, then these are your payments. If they do, I'm assuming you would refinance to a similar shape as what you see here.
Understood. I just want to make sure there was a $10
Yeah.
million forgotten item there.
Not forgotten.
I knew there was.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear about
It is
that.
a big deal.
Absolutely.
Just to close out the principal discussion, again, just make sure I understand what I'm hearing. The $40 million seems like a preferred option. And don't worry about the redemption. We'll just deal with that through rate increases if the time comes.
Or that, or lack thereof.
I support that.
It's money, let's go with the green.
Okay. So we'll go analyze that further from our side, and then we'll make sure, if you have other thoughts as you read through these specific numbers, I know it's a lot to take in, just feel free to reach out. Okay, next issue, I think.
Okay. So I'm going to try to, I will dive into the details to the extent you would like me to. I'll try to keep this high level. So this is discussing the reserve account, as we mentioned, and what these scenarios are intended to show here is we are cash funding. Well, cash would be deposited into the reserve account. We're assuming that cash would come from bond proceeds. So again, this is you have a reserve and you fund it with bond proceeds. This is, you have a reserve, but it's secured by a surety, again, an insurance policy purchased from an insurer for an upfront cost. This assumes that we don't have a reserve, so we're not paying for a surety, we're not depositing to the reserve account. All of these are assuming that we're able to maintain your current rating. And then this scenario in orange gets pessimistic and says, well, you don't have a reserve, you were right on the edge, and the rating agency has now downgraded you from your current A1 rating to an A2 rating. And what is the impact? Again, I'll zoom in on a couple of things, but the biggest impact really on cost is going to be this item here. Now, of course, by having that money in reserve, what's not shown is that come your final payment, you could utilize that money that's in reserve and use it to pay your last payment. But that is not shown here. But from an annual payment cost, it's the most expensive because we are, in this case, depositing $3.9 million into your reserve. Now, this also, again, is assuming that we're trying to do up to $40 million deposit to your project fund, but you'll notice that I'm only putting in 38.2. So through the ordinance, we're capped at a $40 million not to exceed. So because I'm utilizing 3.9 million for reserve, I have to pay issuance costs. I need to reduce what I place into your project fund. So this, again, this is probably the non-preferred alternative. Moving on over, so then this is the surety. So you'll notice that I'm not depositing any funds in here. I do get your full deposit of $40 million in this case. Issuance expenses are a little bit up. You know, and we could look at annual debt service, you know, has come down a bit between these two. Now, among having a surety versus no reserve, you'll see costs have gone down further, not a huge difference on an annual basis. So not a lot of difference, but this is assuming and taking somewhat of a risk that if we don't have a reserve, we're going to maintain the same rating. So that's the difference between purchasing the surety and no reserve, but we've maintained the rating between these two. The difference between these last two, reserve at an A1 rating and a reserve, but I've been downgraded to an A2. So you can see all-in interest cost is up about 4 basis points. And as we'd expect, you know, annual debt service and total debt service is up a touch. If I was say, you know, we're going to be risk averse, I would say then we would probably go for this option here in the middle. Have a reserve, but get a surety. And just one last item, I guess one of the risks is we'll be going to the rating agency before we've necessarily secured the reserve. So we will be telling them that we're going to have a reserve. If for some reason we did that and we weren't able to get a surety, then we would be in this situation. But again, based on the district's history and based on other deals that we've had in the market, sureties are available. So we would expect that this option would be available. And I will pause there.
So my takeaway on this one is that it's really just a matter of some small degrees here between the various scenarios. The upside in not actually funding the reserve is you get to do more capital work. We get to keep the full 40 million. There is a slightly higher cost to that. And I think we talked about this. It's 600,000 versus 649, but that's not really that's not the cost difference, right, Scott, necessarily?
Yeah, this is probably the better look at, say, the differential from the surety standpoint.
Which one we're looking at?
So the green one, if you zoom out just real quick, Scott.
Sure.
So the green one is a scenario where we have a reserve, but it's completely covered by a surety instead of actually funding it with cash. So we get to
In
keep
other words,
that.
an insurance.
So we keep the whole $40 million here. Now, the difference in cost between these is 649 versus 600, but I think because of,
So we pay for the surety on our annual basis when we make our term payment?
I think it's a one-time cost. And
It's upfront,
Correct.
right?
It's an upfront payment.
So that makes a little difference. And it's 50,000 difference, that's all?
there was a nuance to that.
I would say this really is the difference between having a surety and not having a surety. It's more this difference. So we have it at about 100. I mean, I guess less than $100,000. We've assumed that the policy is about 2%. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The 573 and the 649.
Yeah. So that's about the difference. That's the difference in the surety cost.
I'm not clear the difference between the green bar and the blue bar, light blue bar. Which one, the green one has some reserves and a surety?
No, just a surety for the
Okay.
green
So-
one.
Yeah, so the green one assumes that we have a reserve account, but the reserve is secured by a surety, and that cost of the surety is built into the estimated cost of issuance here. The blue assumes no reserve, so therefore we don't have a cost of a surety here. And we've assumed that there is no rating change between these two.
That's us rolling the dice and hoping that they give us the same rating without the insurance.
But if they
attached.
didn't, we go to orange.
If they didn't, we go to the orange,
That's
yeah.
right.
So if you said, I don't want a reserve, and they said, okay, fine, we're downgrading you, then that's orange. Now, one thing I've not mentioned is, again, your current rating is A1. You could also be moving up. So to the extent that, say, you're on the cusp for moving up in your rating, if for some reason, by Moody's standards, they say, well, you could sure do it, but gosh, that 5% actually plays a lot into your rating. We're going to keep you at the A1. But again, I guess I'm trying to show you worst case scenario, but there is a scenario where you could be upgraded.
And there's not a lot of difference in debt service
Yeah.
costs in any of them, really. So the green one would be the safest, is that what
Yeah.
I'm understanding from risk?
Give us the
standpoint?
best chance to get at least affirm our rating, if not get an increase in.
Yeah. I guess green gives you the reserve account and minimizes at least the annual payments that you would need to make. Like I said, of course, the cash that you deposit here would be available to you later on. But from an annual payment standpoint, this, I guess, is, say, the most secure and lowest annual payments, because we're not funding with bond proceeds, we're funding with an upfront payment.
So we won't know it's kind of chicken and the egg. We won't know our bond rating until we make this
Yeah.
decision. We can't make this decision because we don't know the difference in the bond ratings.
It's kind of how conservative versus, taking a risk you want to be. I think we put our best foot forward. If we just pay for the surety, it's about an $80,000 cost. If we could also kind of roll the dice and probably not be all that worse off, but it wouldn't allow us, I think, to make a better presentation when it came to these rating agencies, which,
Do the professionals online have any idea what our chances are of moving up in our rating? Or are you willing to take a guess?
Insider trading.
that's what they're here
I mean,
for.
it's hard for me to believe that that the surety is going to be the deciding factor, but at the same time, we just don't know how close you are. But, is there an argument for potentially moving up? I think there is. Is there an argument for staying where you're at? There probably is. And we just don't know. Sean, I don't know if you have a different. Yeah, right.
So in terms of or our ratings or our interest, basically, if our ratings change, do they all change in the same comparison that they are right now? I mean, there's a percentage difference in all your columns. If our ratings change, do they
Right.
all stay the same? The difference?
Well, let's see. So the three scenarios shown here assume an A1 rating. The scenario here shows an A2 rating. So I guess if for instance, this actually all changed to an A2 rating over here, then your costs would go incrementally up than what I'm showing here, all things being equal.
The outstanding, I'm not sure if this was the question, but the ratings on the outstanding bonds would change, but the rate would not change.
Right.
Those rates are fixed, if that was the question.
Yeah, so no change to your 2013 bonds, no change to your 2021 bond, which is not rated by a rating agency.
The question we'll have to ask ourselves, do we want the green, the surety with a little higher cost or without it in the light blue, right?
And we did a surety on the 2013,
We did.
or was that the insurance? Or are they one and the same?
They're
You did
separate.
you did a surety on it,
So we did do this in 2013 when we
Something,
refinanced.
yeah.
correct? Yeah, so you do not have a cash funded reserve, you have a surety provided by Assured Guarantee, which is one of the insurers that we would be looking at
Yeah.
for this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt you.
I was gonna say, we haven't gone to the rating agencies in over a decade, so we're kind of a new commodity to them, which tells me it might be in our interest to give them a little bit of confidence by having that insurance product, but it's not, as you can see, it's not, a make or break kind of deal, so.
Well, personally, I don't see any reason from our point of view that the way Emerald's managed today and the way the board operates, that we'd have any trouble making a $4 million term payment in any year, no matter what. We'd find a way to do it.
Yeah.
I have no doubts that we'd be good for the money.
Yeah.
But the question is, what are the bond issuers, how comfortable are they with us? That's the question. I guess you kind of answered that. If
Well,
you're
Sure.
That's my perspective. What do you guys have any recommendation on that when it comes down to it, Scott or Sean?
What was the question?
Should we do the surety or not? What level of confidence does it give you?
Well, I guess this gives me then full confidence. And this is sort of rolling the dice over here, So I think for an upfront payment, you're done. You've put your best foot forward as much as you can in this scenario.
green it is.
Preaching to the choir.
John?
I would agree with that. As Kyle mentioned, it's been more than a decade since you've been rated. I would err on the side of the green personally. And we actually don't, there are some nuances that we might be able to delay the decision a little bit, but I would start with the green. That would be my bias. There's nothing wrong with the right side of the page. But you asked for a recommendation, and that would be my starting point.
What does everybody else think?
What?
Green. I think
Green?
green. Green it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you get this presentation, you'll actually notice that all the times I show you the green scenario, it's the same throughout the presentation. So you continue to select, I think, the
Nice trick.
Yeah. Subtle.
That's his way of seeing if we're paying attention or not.
And now for my final trick. Bond payment structure. So as I mentioned, multiple ways to how long to amortize, how to actually shape the debt. I'm showing you just a couple of basic ways. If you wanted something more exotic, you can do that in the bond market. So the differences between these two columns is, we're showing again 25-year amortization for both versus 20-year amortization over here. this is the level case. So if I took away the gray bars below, the blue would be equal payments each and every year. And then wrap, you've seen a number of times, wrapped around your existing debt. And again, here I've shortened the amortization to 20 years. And you can kind of see the difference between the two. You could see down here, if we look at, what's the payment, the initial payments, $4.9 million versus 5.26. So, $300,000 more annually. However, you'll also note the difference in total debt service, of course, when I go from a 20-year amortization is at 60 million to about $68 million. So longer amortization, higher total debt service cost. Longer amortization is a smaller annual payment. So that's the trade-off here.
Who shows us in a minute though? It's hard to see them here on a whole page.
Can you zoom in, Scott?
Oh, yes.
Hard to see the numbers from here with the
Yeah.
whole, all
Yep.
portions.
Now I can.
Can't even see the TV.
That looks a lot better.
Okay, so again, this is 25-year level, 25-year wrapped. So you can see the difference again, total debt service between the two here.
And the apples to apples between just if it was wrapped 20 versus 25, which columns are those?
Here we go, right?
If you
So
scroll
that, excuse me. So just to reorient ourselves, oops, I've gone backwards.
That's the green and
Actually,
the orange.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is not, I don't see that this is the correct. Oh, I guess, yeah, it doesn't look like these are the correct number. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I was looking at the 2026 payment, which is here, but the follow-on years are correct. So about a $500,000 difference between the two, but sorry. You were asking about the two different wrapped scenarios?
Yeah, if we just wanted to compare the difference in the 5-year amortization, I think it's the green versus the orange, right?
That's what I think. too.
That's correct. Yeah, so wrapped is both green and orange, 25 being green, 20 being orange.
You got a
So
total debt service of 76 million versus 64. So
yeah, let me see if I can somehow get, well, yeah, so total debt service, 76, as you said, $4.5 million annual versus 63 and almost $5 million annual.
I think the 20-year pushes up to about 5 million annual debt service. So
Versus, what's the other? Can't see.
you go
Yeah.
zoom back out real quick. Sorry, we keep doing that to you.
Oh, that's all right, sorry.
About $500,000 more a year
Yeah,
to save 12 million.
Yeah.
I think we ought to go with the orange.
Yeah, you're 4.3-ish versus 5. That's one, again, we're gonna wanna model our
That's
financial
quite a big, that's
forecast.
quite a big drop in total cost. I think we should look at that.
Yeah.
yeah.
That doesn't mean I think we should do
Yeah.
that. I think we ought to give that serious
I
consideration.
think if we can, it'd be nice. I definitely wanna make sure we've got enough breathing space, in the near future and just see what the impact might be on rates. That could cause us to go a little higher to make sure that we've got proper coverage. So, but we can run those scenarios.
So we can 50-50 on green, orange right now till we get more data? Is
Yeah,
that what you were thinking?
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Another, I guess, way to look at it, it's the life of what we're building.
Yeah.
It does better match. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it financially
You're
makes a difference, but,
Yeah, you're right.
but
Agree.
this
Yeah,
stuff's gonna last a lot longer than 20 years.
It is.
It's gonna last a lot longer
That's
than
another point.
25, so let those people out there help pay for it.
No, I get it.
But I don't know if
That's
that's,
the
it's
theory.
just another consideration. I see
Yeah.
what
The
Brian's
green
saying.
needs these
completely.
$12 million save. That's a lot of money.
Oh, I know,
That is a lot.
yeah,
I know.
You know?
That's a huge amount of money.
It's a decent amount.
yeah.
And we also, internally, we look at, if we ever borrowed again for a building or something, are we pushing us into an uncomfortable spot with 5 million being the baseline? Probably not a huge enough difference that becomes a concern, but.
Well, and again, it's not that much more than we had debt service 10 years ago.
That's true, yeah.
You know, I mean, back in 17, not quite 10 years, but.
I think, to our ratepayers, my experience with a school board bond, a school bond of it was 17 million, but it was retiring, so we we didn't have to raise our tax, that was a tax rate, I mean, it was, and that was a huge selling point,
There's no change.
even though it passed by 12 votes, so.
Yeah, well, there's something to that, trying to maintain stability.
Yeah, that was just something.
So you said if we have to borrow for a new building, is there any other way? Are we gonna have to borrow for a new?
Well,
Make a donation for your retirement.
That took a hit the last couple of weeks. Just a whammo. Glad I'm not drawing it.
we could not do a building, we could do just a depot or something, we could leverage, other projects that we're talking about, potentially getting revenue from. So there's some options out there, but
20 years is a lot of time to make up our mind.
yeah. We did talk about somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 million as a new operations site, being our contribution, but that could be a bigger discussion about other revenue sources too. So,
Numbers for that were pretty frightening. If we went first class.
yeah, it's double that if we were to build from scratch, so.
I'd say pending further analysis of the green and orange options, that's where we are at this point.
Yeah, looks
Does that
like
make
it.
sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So we'll run those and
Yeah.
kind of see what our comfort level is with the current rate increase assumptions that we have. And if it looks like it's gonna push those higher, we'll get back to you and let you know.
All else being equal, well, we'll see how well I did on that, on the.
Yeah, you
forecast
modeled
of
this
those.
already at
Yeah,
one point.
Yeah.
It was 35 million though, so the 40 million will
It'll
push
push it
somewhat
up a little
higher.
bit,
Yeah.
and I don't remember what rate I used, so we'll
Yeah,
see.
okay.
We'll do some work.
We'll definitely give you a sense of what the rate impacts might be, is at some point, we're gonna need to have some of this come out of rates, and it's just a matter of, whether our current baseline is enough to capture all that.
Yep.
And
Correct.
hopefully it is.
Well, an extra million.
All right.
An extra million a year is only what, 2% of our revenues?
Yeah.
roughly?
It's not a lot, especially now that we're.
It's all big money, don't get me wrong, but
Well, I think if we had been in the environment we were in the last couple of years with Slice, that would be a different discussion, where
riskier.
we're having to really look at cash reserves. It's gonna be a different world post-October, so that would be nice.
You actually sleep nights once in a while.
Well, sometimes, yeah.
God will.
Is there any more?
All right, Scott.
I'll be able to sleep better.
Okay. So this doesn't have any of the data. This is just meant to give you a quick visual where we basically, I guess what's showing as pink on top assumes a $35 million borrowing occurs in 2027, and that we structured the new borrowing with equal payments each and every year, amortized over 20 years. So we just stack it on top of what you just looked at, just to give a sense of, well, how does it look? Now, of course, just like we're discussing here, this doesn't mean that when you get out to 2027 or whenever you look for another borrowing, that you can't be talking about structuring this debt differently. Again, just trying to show in a way a worst case scenario where we just put it on top. So I think the options it sounds like you're looking at really are these two down below here, the two wrapped options, 20 and 25 years.
We did look at that when we did our strategic planning in August. What if we did all of this plus a building, and $7 to $8 million a year is kind of the number we came to for debt service. That looks okay from a debt to assets perspective. We were still in the comfortably like 35, maybe pushing 40% range. The bigger concern would, I think, just be the debt coverage and making sure that we can handle that at those levels. But that's a future discussion. Obviously, that's a theoretical if we do have to borrow again. This just kind of shows what that would look like.
Yep. And I'll turn to the final slide, just some of the items of consideration that we brought up earlier. So one is bond insurance. So we've talked about the surety. That secures the reserve account, again, the reserve account being about 1 year's worth of debt service. Bond insurance ensures the whole principal and interest of the issue. That's also provided by the same type of insurance companies. It's also a single upfront payment. So again, they would step in to the extent that you needed them to step in to pay your debt service. Now, that would be probably the worst thing you could do, and it's not free. You'll certainly have to pay them back, so they'll become your best friends for a really long time. So for that upfront fee, for that upfront fee, you get the insurer's rating. So that's really the benefit here. Assured Guarantee is currently rated AA by S&P. Same thing with Build America Mutual. I do note that to use Build America Mutual would require an amendment to the master resolution, which Stacy is actually building into the supplemental resolution. But I guess final point is the insurance will only be used if the cost of purchasing the insurance provides a benefit substantial enough in the form of lower yields. If it doesn't, then we're not going to buy it because again, really the play is to provide to pay an upfront cost and achieve that benefit when the bonds are sold. So again, that'll be an analysis. We will be requesting insurance bids from these two insurers and then making that decision of whether it makes sense.
And that feels like more of just it's a math equation at that point. We either use it or we don't, depending on the yield.
Right. That's right. Rating agencies. So the district's 2013 bonds are rated by Moody's. Moody's probably rates most of the Northwest public power entities. Your 2021 bond is not rated. Since that was placed with the bank, there was no reason for us to get a rating. It wouldn't have done anything for you in a positive way. But of course, the rating agencies are going to look at your total debt burden when they rate you. But again, these particular bonds don't carry a rating. For the 2025 bonds, we plan to use Moody's, and we are looking at whether to add a second rating agency like an S&P or Fitch. Now, rating agencies do charge an upfront fee, so that'll be built into the issuance expenses, and then they also charge to a varying degree an annual surveillance fee. So there is partly a gift that'll keep on giving after these bonds are issued. And finally, principal payment dates. Your 2013 bonds have November 1st principal payments. Your 2021 bond has a December 1st, and the district's taking a look. Does it make sense to actually shift those larger principal payment dates to a different period of time that better matches your cash flow? So again, that's we're able to sell these bonds. I think for investors will buy bonds regardless of the principal payment date. So it's really up to the district's convenience as to when you would like to make your principal payment.
Right now in November is a lift with the property taxes and a bunch of other stuff due at the same time, so it'd be nice to shift that if we can.
And because I have mercy on you, that is the last of my slides.
Thank you for getting through all that, and thank you all for digging in and helping. I know that was a lot of information.
Well, I think we got a good picture now.
Yeah.
Quick question. These bonds will be sold to some,
Yeah.
so if somebody.
Sean, who's gonna buy our bonds?
So bond funds typically in professional retail, which is professional retail is a fancy name for a money manager. So your bonds will wind up in the hands of individuals eventually, mostly individuals. And there's a fairly decent number will be placed within Oregon because not all of them, there's not the capacity to absorb it all in Oregon, but because you are an income tax state, there is a slight advantage to an Oregon investor to owning it. But mostly bond funds and professional retail. Some insurance companies will also participate. So it'll be people like BlackRock and Fidelity and people like these, Nuveen.
We are working to set up some kind of a viewing option for when we actually do the sale, allowing you to take part if you want to and check it out. So cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Charles?
Stacy, you awake?
Oh. She's hanging in there. I gotta tell you, she's done the huge lift on our official statement so
She
far,
has
so.
all of the documents, the
Oh my goodness.
ordinances, resolutions,
Yeah.
yes, huge.
This is a really good team that we've put together here.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. We'll be.
Of course.
We'll be
Very helpful.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Right.
Well, we have, just real quick, we got a 5:30 time certain, so we can either finish the meeting or break now and then come back and do
What else
these.
we have to do? Oh, we gotta vote on the
Just the consent agenda, I think, yeah.
You want a break and then we do the scholarships and
You'll just have to come back after that to finish everything.
where are we going?
We'll be here. Yeah.
He said, come back like we're going out in the men's.
Well, I know.
No, the Barnstable.
You could either close the meeting and then do that, or just have it part of the meeting, that's fine.
Not trying to do it now.
Just if you want to
Let's
take
do, we
off.
just have to do the consent agenda, just do it.
Consent agenda.
There you go.
Yeah, I move it.
So let's go ahead and we can do the consent agenda and still have a short break. So,
Talk to short of the breaks, get.
so the items placed on the consent agenda are of routine nature to be voted on without discussion. Items requested by the board member for discussion will be acted on separately. So we have minutes and approval of claims.
I move we
No,
approve.
I just want to note that we had a minor revision to the March 4th minutes of misspelling. And we've taken care of that. So,
Thank you.
I move that the minutes are accepted as amended.
Is there a second? Second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now you can go to that.
Now we have the approval of claims.
Did do we have claims?
You took care of both of those.
That's all,
That was in-
that's
that was-
all in the consent agenda. She
Welcome to
did.
being president.
Excuse me.
That's okay. We'll get you straight.
She made a motion to approve the.
Hallelujah, thanks.
Right,
This stuff here, how does this work?
do you want to conclude
You're
the
gonna
meeting?
read that.
Pardon?
Or you want to conclude the meeting now and then you
Just
can?
read.
Well, we're gonna.
Is that your sub-district?
No, it wasn't going in my subject.
Yeah, they're.
Oh, you could. And then-
We could just do the.
Just one.
scholarship
Just
presentation.
one of the latest stuff. All right, I'll look at that.
It's all right. You're reading.
Are we
We'll
on
do a
break?
break. We're taking a break.
It's been a long.
Yeah, we're still in-
President.
Thank you.
Put this bunch together.
Yeah. So we have order of contracts and approvals.
We have nothing tonight, nor do we have any motions or resolutions.
See, that's quite good. We did the empowering review of motions.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda with the suggestion with the edits to the previous minutes of March 4th. That was unanimously approved.
There's no public. Any suggested items?
I have one, but it's not specific when we do it. I think we need to talk about how we finance, this isn't a panic thing, so don't do so, but I would like to talk a little bit about how we fund the board's travel budgets. As an example, the board has detailed Charles with attending NWPPA meetings. And I think that we should consider in future budgets, funding budgets that account for that in an individual director's budget, so that it doesn't come out of their normal travel budget. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense.
Yeah, and I also think we should consider, Patty won't like this, but I think any big trips that we're gonna plan, I think the board should consider voting on these as a whole. And if the board as a whole decides that an individual should go, then that would be paid for outside of a director's budget as well.
No, that changes everything we've all, EPUD has done from the beginning.
We're not,
Brian.
this is a suggestion.
I
I'm just
know.
talking about
Okay,
some
that's just a
ideas.
suggestion. Okay,
I know you
fine.
wouldn't like it.
No, I don't. I think you
That's
guys
for a
want to be
suggestion.
punitive of
No, not-
bullshit.
That's not the point.
No, sounds like that's
Anyway,
the point.
I think we should, it's a way to change our budget slightly. It's just an item for consideration. I don't have any hard opinions about it.
So, are you suggesting like increase the budget? Or
Well, I think
in addition to,
if
just something to talk
if a
about?
director has a budget, we all have a travel budget, an outside meeting budget, not counting our normal stuff and all that.
Correct.
And I think if the board, Emerald as a whole details someone to have a responsibility outside of the normal things we go to, like a
Representative.
agency, then the board ought to pay that director additional money for that responsibility.
Correct,
And that's the simple part of it.
got it.
So why don't we schedule, put it on the agenda sometime?
I'm thinking ahead of budget time, because if we do it, it'd be something for next year's budget to consider. It's not a major issue, but I just thought it was
Okay.
something to.
No, I think this discussion would be good.
Yeah.
We should probably have it every year.
It also affects the GM's budget when he gets sometimes obligated or appointed or asked to do things. It costs, but as long as we pull that into.
I can usually cover that.
You can cover that.
Yeah, that's a good point, like the NEA thing you went to the other day, you know.
That's all right. I'm-
That's a little outside of normal responsibilities too, you know.
I got a couple board seats that they're not really big asks on my budget, and I feel they're kind of part of the regional thing that you do as a GM, so I'm okay with it.
So just talking about that. No, I didn't bring this up in the meeting, but
Is this for a future board meeting?
no.
Let's
Okay, then.
put a pin in it, we'll come back. It's easy to go down the side alleys, I do it too.
We all do.
Upcoming meetings, there's Oputa on the 27th. Got a meeting on April 1st. The PPC on the 2nd and 3rd, those are virtual, and so is PNUC virtual this time. We have a board meeting on the 15th.
April Fools and Tax Day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Huzzah.
Including comments, I've got a little one. I just want to throw out Rob's help here. Last week I had, my neighbor's a science teacher at a middle school. And they were doing Forging's doing an e-cycle contest, and in their county, they were doing a classroom contest, so I thought maybe EPUD's got some extra stuff. You know, it all goes to next step recycling anyway.
Uh-huh.
And so Rob came back and said, yeah, I have a bin, it was all ready to go, good timing. And he said, you might need a truck, and I thought he was kidding.
It showed up in
You know, I
the
thought one of
forklift.
these plastic bins,
Right.
it was, so I turned in 139 items, 200 pounds of recycled, that it
Wow.
was actually headed there.
Yeah.
The
Anyway,
guy next up said, well, they canceled the pickup yesterday.
Yeah.
So Rob had already scheduled, so the classroom got credit for it. I don't know if they won, but it was pretty
Right.
cool.
That's good.
that is good. That's
Like-
great.
We should do that with all.
50 some keyboards.
This have to keep us like that before. You
It was a good-
wipe this out.
I mean,
I got a
good for the
couple
kids.
He cleaned it
Yeah,
out.
so anyway, I just wanted to,
That's
Rob,
great.
to look
That's
up
great.
there
Yeah,
to
thanks.
juggle around so I could pick them up instead of X.
We'll pass that along.
That was my only.
There we go.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
A lot of information.
I thought it was an easy night.
It was supposed to be, but we can't let her get an easy